Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to today's listening session. My name is Drew Watermullen, and I am the manager of the Analysis Services section in the Department of Natural Resources, Bureau of Environmental Analysis and Sustainability. I have been assigned to moderate today's listening session for the Draft Wisconsin Wolf Management Plan. With me today is Randy Johnson, the DNR's large carnivore specialist and the lead on the department's wolf management planning effort. Randy will be making a brief presentation before we hear from members of the public. Joining Randy and me are Sam Jonas, manager of the Species Management section in the Bureau of Wildlife Management, Katie Grant, the agency's communications director, and Ryan Bauer, a communications specialist in DNR's Office of Applied Sciences, who will provide technical support for the listening session this evening. The DNR has set this time on February 7th, 2023 for this listening session to provide an additional opportunity for the public to share their thoughts and comments on the draft wolf management plan that the department has prepared. We are recording this session so that we have a record of the comments received here today. The public review and comment period for the draft wolf management plan began in November of 2022 and is scheduled to conclude on February 28th, 2023. Written comments on the draft plan may be submitted via an online tool, by email, or by regular mail. Comments received here today will be given equal consideration alongside those received via the other avenues of submission. We appreciate all of you who have joined us today. The session is scheduled to run until all registered commenters have had an opportunity to present their testimony. Today's listening session is being held pursuant to Section NR 1.11, Parent 2 of the Wisconsin Administrative Code and is informational in nature. This is not a contested case hearing, nor is it an adversarial hearing. We will start with a brief presentation from Randy Johnson highlighting the main points of the draft wolf management plan. I will then go over the logistics and ground rules for providing comments during today's session, after which we will open it up to hear from those who have registered to provide comments. This listening session is being conducted on the Zoom online platform. The session is also being live streamed on the DNR's YouTube channel and via the Wisconsin Eye Network. Please note that if you are watching on YouTube or on Wisconsin Eye, you will not be able to provide oral comments. If you have joined this listening session via Zoom or by telephone, you are currently muted and will remain so during the entire listening session, except for when it is your opportunity to speak. This will help ensure that everyone listening will be able to focus their attention on the person who is providing comments. We are not using video during this meeting. If you are currently using your video, we ask that you disenable it, as this will help preserve bandwidth and will help minimize distractions and allow focus on the comments that are being made. If you do not wish to make comments at today's listening session and only want to listen in, you can watch the live stream on the DNR's YouTube channel instead. The link to view the live stream of the session is on the DNR's Wolf Management webpage. The DNR's Wolf Management Plan webpage also includes the draft management plan, along with supporting materials and other resources. You can navigate to this page from DNR's homepage, which is dnr.wisconsin.gov. Again, dnr.wisconsin.gov. From the homepage, you can click on the search icon, which is the magnifying glass on the top right of the page, and type the words Wolf Management Plan. This will take you to the wolf management page where you can find the plan and the supporting information. We will now hear a bit about the draft plan from Randy Johnson, and then I will come back and follow up with the logistics and ground rules.
Okay, thank you, Drew, and good afternoon to everyone joining us here today. Again, my name is Randy Johnson. I'm the large carnivore specialist for the department and the lead on this wolf management plan effort. In the next few slides, I will present a high-level overview of some of the key items from the draft plan. The draft contains much more detail than what I can share here today, so I again encourage people to take a closer look by reviewing the plan itself. Before I continue, I think it's also helpful to frame up, excuse me, the overall theme of this draft plan, and that's what's written on the screen here: from recovery to sustainable management. The current state wolf management plan was written in the late 1990s at a time with some 200 wolves in the state per the overwinter count, and the long-term fate of the wolf population in the state was still tenuous. Accordingly, that plan's focus was largely on guiding and encouraging wolf recovery in the state. Today, with wolves securely occupying most suitable habitat available in the state, this draft plan recognizes and applauds the biologically recovered status of wolves in Wisconsin, and accordingly turns management focus from wolf recovery to long-term stewardship and sustainable management of wolves in the state. So we'll start by going over the process. The department began developing an updated wolf management plan back in early 2021. Throughout the process, the department has engaged the public and our partners in multiple ways for the purpose of gathering inclusive and diverse input and to facilitate discussions on the future of wolf management. All of this public input is intended to help ensure the draft plan considers the diversity of perspectives related to wolf management. This public input process has had several steps, including an online public input questionnaire that was open to all members of the public, bringing together a 29-member wolf management plan committee. That group met for several all-day meetings and had some very robust discussions. Inviting and participating in government-to-government consultations with the tribal nations of Wisconsin, conducting a scientific survey of public opinions of wolves and wolf management in the state, and conducting extensive reviews of the scientific literature relevant to wolf management to help ensure the latest science is used to inform the plan as well. You can learn more about all of these different sources of input and processes by visiting the DNR's Wolf Management Plan webpage. And so all of these ingredients I just mentioned have been considered and factored in by a team of DNR staff who have developed and written the proposed plan. The plan and its proposals are written within the scope of DNR authority, given current state and federal law, and this has many direct implications on wolf management, including the wolf harvest season, the wolf conflict program, funding sources, and more. The draft plan was then shared with the public in November 2022 to encourage public review, comments, and further discussions. The public review and comment period remains open until February 28th, the end of this month. Public input and engagement has been the backbone of this process since the beginning. And this listening session, again, serves as one more way to hear from the public during the review period. And comments received here today, as well as all the comments received during the public review period, will be reviewed and considered by the department while preparing a final draft of the plan. So let's take a look at what's actually in the plan. On the screen here is an outline of the document, which is, it contains an intro section and then organized into 4 sections. Section 1 is titled Gray Wolf Biology, Ecology, and Population Dynamics. It's a scientific species overview covering the biology and ecology of the species across its range. Section 2 is focused on the human dimensions and cultural significance of wolves, providing summaries and insights into the variety of opinions and perspectives related to wolves. Section 3, titled Gray Wolves in Wisconsin. This section tells the story of wolves in Wisconsin. It reviews the history of wolves and wolf management in the state, including things like population monitoring, human-wolf conflict, and the laws that currently influence wolf management in the state. And then section 4, titled Wolf Management in Wisconsin, From Recovery to Sustainable Management. This is the policy portion of the plan. It lays out the overall plan goal, as well as a series of detailed objectives, strategies, and products intended to guide wolf management in the years ahead. And because the complete document itself is about 178 pages, it's pretty large and extensive. I recommend anyone that's interested in reviewing the plan, submitting comments, but may not have time to digest the full document, focus your attention on section 4. That is the heart of the plan. Next, I'll go over the plan goal and speak on several key elements from the draft plan. So the overall goal of the proposed wolf management plan is to ensure a healthy and sustainable wolf population and promoting the benefits therein, while also addressing and reducing the negative interactions and conflicts that also do occur. In other words, the proposed wolf management plan aims to find an effective balance between ecology, conflict, and outdoor opportunities. In action, this means ensuring the wolf population remains healthy and sustainable into the future, while also recognizing and managing the diverse public preferences surrounding wolves in the state. This means providing a well-regulated wolf harvest season consistent with state law, and also promoting other positive interactions with wolves through wildlife viewing and tracking opportunities. It means providing efficient relief and assistance to those who suffer wolf-related conflict using the best available tools, including both non-lethal and lethal measures as appropriate and within current law. This proposed goal recognizes that trade-offs inherently exist among these broad objectives, and management actions should strive to find a balance that reflects the diverse viewpoints related to wolf management and the reality that the negative impacts related to wolves often disproportionately impact those who live and recreate in wolf range. So how does the plan propose to achieve this goal? The plan proposes a management framework that is based not upon a single static numeric population goal, but rather based upon the principles of adaptive wildlife management. This means that the measure of success would be evaluating the on-the-ground conditions related to key items such as wolf population numbers, wolf-related conflict levels, and providing various outdoor opportunities associated with the wolf population, rather than managing the population based on a single numeric population goal. These discussions would occur annually in each management zone to ensure that decisions incorporate local conditions and perspectives. This approach acknowledges that both public preferences and biological conditions are likely to vary through time, and this approach allows for adaptable, active management that learns from past actions and continually applies the best information available. This process is also similar to current management of other charismatic species in the state, such as black bear and white-tailed deer. The plan recognizes that in order to be successful in implementing this framework, there's a need for continued collaboration, and that collaboration with government partners, tribal governments, stakeholders with diverse interests in wolf management, and the public. So one key way the plan proposes to foster this collaboration is through the formation and engagement of the DNR Wolf Advisory Committee. Doing so would be intended to foster accountability while also recognizing the diversity of viewpoints and values among stakeholders in the public. The makeup of this committee is outlined in the plan to include state, federal, and tribal biologists, along with a balanced and inclusive stakeholder component. The committee's charge would be to engage in discussions and make science-based recommendations to the department regarding wolf management, including input on preliminary harvest recommendations consistent with state law. These harvest discussions would center around trying to find that balance between ecology, conflict, and outdoor opportunities described earlier. These discussions would ultimately result in the committee providing these harvest recommendations to the department to either maintain increase or decrease the wolf population in a given management zone. Again, ultimately trying to find and maintain that balance between these various social and biological factors. And again, these discussions would occur each year in each management zone to assure that the management actions are having the desired effect. Next, I'll mention a few key specific elements. One primary objective is to address and reduce wolf-related conflict, including conflict with livestock, pets, and hunting dogs. The plan recommends continuing to partner with USDA Wildlife Services to deliver a fully integrated wolf conflict program. This means tailoring site-specific responses to conflict and appropriately using both non-lethal and lethal tools within the department's authority. It also emphasizes the importance of providing fair and efficient financial compensation for those suffering wolf losses, providing practical resources and techniques to proactively reduce conflict, and continuing to research and test new abatement methods. The plan also includes several proposals intended to improve wolf harvest season implementation, again, within the scope of current law. These include reducing harvest registration times, issuing wolf licenses that are valid in specific zones instead of statewide, and calibrating the number of licenses issued based upon factors such as harvest rates and estimated hunter success rates. Together, these proposals are intended to improve the ability to accurately meet state harvest quotas while also providing an improved experience for participants in the wolf season. And finally, the draft plan also draws upon the historical success of wolf recovery in the state by recommending the continuation of a number of successful practices. These include things like rigorous population monitoring, including annual winter tracking surveys and population estimates, radio collaring wolves, evaluating wolf mortalities, law enforcement efforts, and wolf population health surveillance. The plan places an emphasis on supporting and conducting sound scientific research to support management decisions and emphasizes the need to deliver practical and science-based information on wolves to empower the public, including those individuals living and or recreating in wolf range. And lastly, the plan outlines the continued use of management zones across the state and includes updated zone boundaries, reflecting a better understanding of wolf habitat and conflict potential, along with two types of smaller subzones, which have been designed to address specific regional concerns. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. Thanks for your interest in being here today to learn more about these proposals that are in the draft plan. And thank you for being here to share your thoughts. Back to you, Drew.
Thank you, Randy. In a few minutes, we're going to open up the meeting for public comments, but first, I'm going to go over the logistics and the ground rules. As I mentioned earlier, everyone is currently muted and will remain so during the entire listening session, except for when it is your opportunity to speak. When it is your turn to speak, I will call you by name, by the name that you provided when you registered to participate in the listening session. I will then send you a request through Zoom asking you to unmute so that you can provide your comments. This will appear as a pop-up window on your screen. And if you are on Zoom, you'll need to click the unmute button. Only you will be able to speak, but everybody will be able to hear you. When you have finished speaking, I will remute you and call on the next participant. Each time I call a participant, I will notify the next two people that their turns are coming up. We have a large number of attendees this afternoon and anticipate that today's listening session will run well into the evening. Out of respect for tribal sovereignty and deference to elected officials, we will first hear from leaders from Wisconsin's Native American tribes. I will then call on people in the order that they registered prior to yesterday's registration deadline. Staff will periodically post in the chat box the names of the next 15 people who are in line to provide comments. You can click on the chat button at the bottom of the screen to see if you are on the most recent list. If you registered but called in by telephone this afternoon and didn't notify us earlier today of the number you're calling from, we do not know who you are. Only your telephone number appears on our lineup. So if you are calling in and you registered but did not notify us of your number earlier today, I ask that you go to the chat and that you put your name and phone number in so that we know what phone number is associated with somebody who registered to testify. If you need to, you may leave the listening session and return later. To do so, simply click the Leave button on the bottom of your screen. To return, use the same Zoom link you used to first enter the listening session. You may also step away from the session without logging out. If we call on you and you are away, I will move on to the next person and your name will be moved to the end of the list. If you have registered but do not wish to speak this evening, please let us know by sending a message in chat and we will remove your name from the lineup. For those attendees providing comments, we ask that you first identify yourself by stating your name and the location that you are calling from. We are not requiring individuals to provide their specific addresses, only the town or city from which they are calling. As a courtesy to everyone who wishes to offer comments today, we're going to limit comments to 2 minutes per person, as indicated in the news release and registration information. As noted, we have a large number of people who have indicated that they plan to comment. If you do not need 2 minutes to testify, a shorter comment will still be appreciated. I will let you know when your time is nearly up, and then I ask that you please wrap up what you are saying. If you use any inappropriate, offensive, or vulgar language, I will mute you and move on to the next speaker. I may also remove you from the listening session completely, and you will be unable to rejoin. When you have finished providing your comments, I will again mute you and call on the next person to speak. If you are using someone else's Zoom link that they received when they registered to participate, you're going to show up under their name. When there are multiple meeting attendees with the same name, we don't know which to unmute. So if you have joined with someone else's registration, you are not registered to speak, and we ask that you please leave the Zoom meeting and view the session on the YouTube channel. Finally, if anyone is having technical issues with Zoom, please use the chat feature to let us know. You will find the chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Online technical assistance is also available from Zoom at support.zoom.us. Again, for online support for Zoom, support.zoom.us. Do not submit written comments through the chat. Comments sent through the chat will not be part of the record. If you have lengthy comments, or if you do not wish to offer comments at today's listening session, we invite you to submit them in writing. Written comments may be submitted in lieu of or in addition to oral comments at today's session and will have the same weight and effect. Written comments can be sent by email to dnrwildlifeswitchboard@wisconsin.gov. Again, that is DNR Wildlife Switchboard, all one word, at wisconsin.gov. Or they can be mailed to Wolf Management Plan Comments, P.O. Box 7921, Madison, Wisconsin, 53707-7921. All electronic and hard copy comments must be submitted or postmarked no later than Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Finally, we will not be responding to questions during this listening session. The purpose of today's session is to hear from you. If you have a question, you may include it in your comment, but we will not be answering questions during this session. All right, so now it's time to hear from you. I will call people to speak one at a time, and we'll call out names to let you know who is next in line. When you hear your name called to speak, I will unmute you, and you can begin by stating your name and location. So first up will be William Reynolds from the St. Croix Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin. And following William will be Doug Cox and Michelle Bowden. And William, if you're unmuted now, it looks like you are. You may just state your name and where you're calling from and give us your comments.
Yeah, my name is William Reynolds from Webster, Wisconsin, and I am glad to be part of this. I know it's a very touchy situation between the DNR and the local and the tribal identities, but I have just a couple questions, actually comments that weren't really touched on, that I was thinking about. One is, what would be, the tracking side of wolves throughout the year when this plan gets going? Is it going to be, are you going to use volunteers to help track, or are you just going to take the information from hunting and the local residents on where they're at, what they're doing in some of these regions? My next one is, what are the consequences going to be for individuals who get a license and hunt, and that quota is over hunted? What are the consequences going to be for that? My third one is, what would be the resolution on a DNR side, or what if the DNR is looking at resolutions on the DNR side if hunting dogs get attacked while they're out with their dogs in those areas? Other than that, I'm just looking forward to getting this up and running, and that's all the questions I have for today.
All right, thank you for your comments, William. Next up will be Doug Cox, and after Doug will be Michelle Bowden and Melissa Lewis. And Doug, if you would just start with your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Okay, can you hear me, Drew?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Doug Cox, Menominee Tribe. I'm a seated tribal legislator. Also hold a position in our land management office as director for the tribe. We're here in Kashina. So I'd just like to say on behalf of the tribe that we want to thank DNR for the precision that they put into developing this plan in relation to Menominee and other tribal nations that have been able to participate in the approach it's taken. So tribal consultations have been productive. We've been at the table. We've been able to share our concerns, not only in hearings, but directly with staff and leadership that are developing this plan. We've also had the privilege of having a seat on the committee. Our biologist, Donald Ryder, has filled that seat for us. He's our expert and has done a great job in interacting and has great feedback. So some of the specific stuff with the plan, we all through the process have indicated that, we were pushing hard for a buffer around our reservation, and of course, closing the reservation to harvest quotas as well. We certainly accomplished that. We know that the plan includes the buffers. Although, good, not great. We would have preferred the closure of any harvest in those buffers, but again, we understand the importance of this plan and how we are approaching it, and being able to sit at the table together, not a compromise, but a management tool, and we can for today live with that. We also are happy with the adaptive wildlife management approach, and we hope DNR sticks with that. We would certainly like to add a mechanism to have traditional ecological knowledge built into that, more specifically than the criteria that you're using now. Traditional ecological knowledge is important to tribes. We've used it for a long time. Organizations like Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, we are all familiar with, use that method, and we hope that that's something we can build in moving forward. One concern that we do have is even with the buffers, our reservation being a closed unit and tribal lands, we worry about the dog hunting related to the activities when hunting does begin, and that dogs will enter into the tribal lands, unattended, and we need to be sure that if that happens, that our tribe is notified by any hunters that are hunting with dogs for wolves. And again, you may have heard this, may have not, the significance of this animal to us, it's in the plan. There's reference to the importance in tribal culture of this animal, but for Menominee, we need to keep saying it. We need to keep educating DNR and our publics on why we feel this way. This animal is culturally significant. It's part of our creation story. It's part of our clans. We hold this animal in special regard, and we'll continue to do that in the future. We'll continue to protect it within our boundaries. Our tribal laws currently do not allow harvest of this animal, and I don't see us changing that in the future. We treat this animal for protective at the highest level because it is our brother, it is our clan within our tribal lands. And lastly, when hunting, if hunting becomes part of this plan in the future, and a season opens, we certainly don't expect a repeat of the 2021 season where the massive overharvest occurred, but we want to be assured that this doesn't happen again. And through that, we hope that consultation and the communication and the partnership and the recognition of our government-to-government status as a sovereign nation continues into the future, and that we remain embedded in part of management of this species as part of this plan. So that's what I have for today. And again, thanks DNR, thanks Drew, thanks Randy for all your hard work, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Doug. Up next will be Michelle Bowden from the Lac-Courte Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. And following Michelle will be Melissa Lewis. And after Melissa will be Amy Mueller.
Good afternoon. This is Michelle Bodine from the Lac-Courte tribe. And I want to thank you for having this opportunity to talk today. First off, going through your plan, I do have some comments that I wanted to make, and I think it's a very well thought out plan, and a lot of the history there is very well written. I did want to make comment that you did identify in your plan that the wolves were relisted on the federal endangered species list, and that's also in the plan. It mentioned that the state has always followed the federal endangered species, and So I'm confused in terms of why we're even considering the hunts. Then if they're on the endangered species list, then we should respect that. But if that is not the case, I do want to make comments as to one of the things that is put in the plan, which I agree with, is the wolves are a very important part of our ecosystem. And one of the things that you mentioned in there was that the fact that CWD, other disease, and sick animals are the main prey that wolves go after. And this is something that we as Native people have always known, that they're there to help this ecosystem and keep it thriving. And only when humans interfere with that, like killing off all the wolves to begin with, and the buffalo and different species, that this is what throws our ecosystems off. It's not them doing it themselves. And as you say, they do become omnivores as well. So they can, and there's a lot of science that goes into them even being able to stop reproducing in times of starvation and famine for themselves. So I just wanted to make comment to that they are self-moderating their own population as well. So in your comments, or in your research that you had in there was a section in there that talked about deer hunting, because I think this is a part that that some people might say is like, well, they take all the deer. And in there, you identified that what they consider a healthy ratio is one wolf within a 1 to 17 mile radius, and deer 1 to 1 mile, 1 deer per mile in an area. And what you identified, what we have in ours is we have wolves, 1 wolf to 10 to 13 miles, but we also have 10 to 26 deer per mile. So I don't see that is an argument for having a hunting season for that purpose of taking all the deer, which we want to prevent a lot of the spread of any of the diseases that are that. And I did want to talk about the overharvesting last year, and I don't believe that is should continue to happen. And giving people 24-hour notice with this day and age with technology, I believe that should be a lot less time frame than giving them a continued time frame to over harvest. And that it extensively increased the amount of wolves that were taken. And I also, in my opinion, I don't believe that dogs should be used to hunt wolves or bear for that matter. And I think the owners of these dogs have responsibility in any injuries or fatalities of their animals. I don't think that, and they are being well compensated for that. And with the inventive technology and them using radio collars and GPS, there's not a whole lot of actual real hunting being done. It's sending out the deer or the dogs and then just following them when they've got a bear treat or a wolf trapped. So I believe that we as a tribe would also make the stance that we need to be involved in our ceded territory. And I personally would not be opposed to not having any harvest in the
Michelle,
territories.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're a bit over time, so I'm going to
Okay.
have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, and so I'll end it there. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next up will be Melissa Lewis. And Melissa will be followed by Amy Miller and Dustin Ladd.
Bonjour. My name is Melissa Lewis, and I'm also an LCO tribal member. And I want to point out that Michelle is one of our TGB tribal governing board members, and appreciate her also chiming in. I have a couple of notes that need to be, we felt that needed to be reiterated for the wolf management plan. The first one is that we thank you to the Wisconsin DNR for the hard work that they put into the draft, and we appreciate the inclusion of sub zones and threshold harvest levels. LCO supports the goal of ensuring a sustainable wolf population to achieve its ecological role on our landscape. We also appreciate the adoption of the non-numeric population goal for Mayangan, which is more compatible with our tribal perspective, as our elders have already stated prior. We appreciate the plan following an adaptive management framework, but this requires monitoring both the shortcomings and the accomplishments of the goals and objectives in the plan. And in order to evaluate and adjust those accordingly, we hope that adequate resources are devoted to this aspect. Appropriate goals and objectives are included in the plan, but falsehoods and misunderstandings continue. So we feel that education must be highest priority, and the implementation of that should be adequately funded and including tribal perspectives. LCO opposes the harvest of Mayangan, and legislative changes should be pursued to revoke this practice. The establishment of tribal buffer zones is a positive move, and the support of the zone-specific permits, as well as the shortening of the registration window. We hope that this is a good way to not repeat the overharvesting of the last wolf hunt, and hope that more measures are put in place so that this does not happen again. Because as said before, Mayangan is a being that we have high regard for as a brother and a teacher. As Michelle said, LCO does not support hounds for hunting. If hounds are used, they should be limited to specific zones. The ecological role that wolves play in limiting the prevalence of CWD should be thoroughly researched and funded. And we hope that partnerships are included in that plan to address this. One of the last things I should say that the tribe feels that we need to handle any that the plan should respect the quota allocations for harvest that the tribes have. And then we also feel very strongly that any plan needs to have two committees. Needs to have a technical committee of experts from tribes, state, and federal that understand the ecological importance and cultural importance of Mayangan, as well as the greater public committees. So with that being said, we do appreciate the opportunity to take these comments, and thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Melissa. Next up will be Amy Miller. And following Amy Miller will be Dustin Ladd and Stephen Bachhaus. Now, before I give Amy the floor, I just want to remind folks, we have over 100 people who have registered to provide comments tonight. So I am going to enforce the 2-minute rule to ensure that everybody gets a chance to talk. So Amy, when you're unmuted, if you want to just state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Thank you, Drew. My name's Amy Mueller, and I'm from Waukesha County. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today and the department for all the effort that went into this plan. Overall, I'm in strong support of the draft plan as it is written, in that it is rightfully focused on the ecological benefits wolves provide. It's reflective of the recent Wisconsin DNR public opinion survey that finds opinions towards wolves have grown significantly more favorable. It also includes critical tribal consultation, as mentioned in the speakers before me. It expresses commitment to science and continued research. It also outlines and strategizes on how to engage with the public for education, as well as the implementation of non-lethal conflict deterrent techniques. Before the plan is finalized, I would ask that even more consideration be given to the connection between wolves and CWD, as brought up with speakers before me as well. The plan does note the possibility that wolves can reduce CWD on the landscape. It also points out that studying the connection between wolves and CWD is difficult because finding the overlap of wolves and CWD seldom occurs. But wait, isn't that a glaring data point in and of itself? It seems unwise to disregard potentially one of our best biosecurity tools we have in our state to address this giant concern, and to which we have no other viable solutions currently. I urge the department to go one step further by creating CWD zones on a temporary basis, where there would be restriction on wolf quotas in those areas where new outbreaks occur beyond the current range, like Shawano and Langlade counties. They would be similar to that of the low quota zones around tribal lands. The CWD zones would be annually evaluated, just as the other management discussions.
Amy, we're coming up on time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up your thoughts.
Certainly. These zones would be evaluated annually, and I also suggest that a deer research scientist focused on this connection have a guaranteed spot within the wolf stakeholder group going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next up will be Dustin Ladd. And following Dustin will be Steve Bachhaus and Jason Mugnani. And I apologize if I mispronounced your names. And Dustin, I'm not seeing you on my list. Dustin, if you're online, if you could send a chat saying you're online and how you're logged in, I will come back to you. Otherwise, I'm moving you to the end of the list. We will move on to Steve Bachhaus. And I am also not seeing Steve online. Same thing, Steve, if you are online and we're missing you, go ahead and send a chat and I'll come back to you in a minute. Otherwise, I'll move you to the end of the line. And Jason Mugnani, I see also not seeing you online. So if you are, send a chat and I'll come back to you in a minute. Next up will be Mike Brust, followed by Tyler Wenzloff and Krista Hoffman. And Mike, you can go ahead and state your name and where you're calling from and make your comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Brust. I'm from Wausau, and I have to say it's disappointing when our DNR has to hold a pretend listening session because they won't hold public hearings. This isn't a listening session. A listening session is where you go and listen to the concerns of the people involved. There's actually a real listening session scheduled for February 28th in Douglas County, where the citizens there are trying to deal with the wolf overpopulation. But it's not being held by our DNR. It's sponsored by groups actually trying to deal with the problems. This is just an extension of the public comments, where large national animal rights organizations script their members to comment from the comfort of their couches about situations they aren't involved in. Ironically, these organizations don't really care about wolves. What they do care about is the millions of dollars they generate for themselves from kind-hearted individuals that have been duped into believing wolves are endangered and at risk. They are not. What isn't being said is it was sportsmen and hunting license dollars that brought wolves back to Wisconsin. But the sportsmen and women who actually fund the DNR are now being double-crossed. The objective of the wolf management plan from the start was to establish a sustainable wolf population in Wisconsin. According to the experts at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, that was accomplished over 20 years ago. Since then, thanks to countless lawsuits by well-funded groups like PETA and HSUS, the wolf population has expanded out of control into many areas of the state considered agricultural or even suburban. The DNR often claimed management was beyond their control, but now when we have their proposal to manage wolves, or more correctly, not manage them, it is clear that they have sided with PETA, HSUS, and other groups instead of our own citizens living in northern rural areas that have to deal with all the negative aspects of wolves. So now you understand why the DNR wants to listen to a vegetarian sitting on her couch in California as much as a farmer in northern Wisconsin literally trying to save his farm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mike. Next up is Tyler Wenzloff. And after we hear from Tyler, we will hear from Krista Hoffman and Rand Atkinson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tyler Winslow from Stoughton, Wisconsin. I am the Director of National Affairs for the Wisconsin Farm Bureau. First, I want to thank the DNR for holding this virtual public listening session, even though we prefer this to be held in person. The Wisconsin Farm Bureau has a number of concerns associated with the draft version of the state wolf management plan. Our principal concern, and one we advocated for as a member of the wolf management plan committee, is the lack of a numeric population goal. The current plan has a numeric population goal, target, whatever you want to call it, of 350 wolves. The draft plan instead favors an adaptive management approach in which a set of ambiguous objectives are set. The lack of a set numeric goal makes setting consistent zone harvest quotas virtually impossible, as these objectives are broadly stated and can easily be redefined by the department. Additionally, WFBF takes issue with the expansion of Zone 4 into Marathon County in central parts of the state previously designated as inappropriate habitat for wolves. This area of the state is now designated as secondary range for wolves, greatly expanding suitable habitat for wolves in the state and putting additional farms at risk of depredation. There is no scientific reason behind the zone change and was made simply because wolves had inhabited the area. In fact, the human population has increased in the area, raising chances of wolf-human interactions. This is in direct conflict of the draft plan's objective B, to reduce wolf-related conflict. WFBF has additional issues with the plan and will be filing official comments with the department. We hope this is just a first step in an extensive public outreach plan that includes in-person public listening sessions throughout the designated primary wolf habitat. An in-person hearing is the only way to ensure rural Wisconsin residents are allowed a voice in the process and not drowned out by out-of-state activists. I want to thank you, the DNR, for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you, Randy Johnson, for his work on the plan specifically, and we appreciate working with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Tyler. Next up will be Krista Hoffman, and after Krista will be Rand Atkinson and Dawn Williams. And Krista, you can just start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Okay, my name is Krista Huffman, a resident, landowner, and dairy farmer in Channel County. My home and family property are located in proposed Zone 2B of the Wolf Management Plan. In the last 10 years, I have recognized an increase in wolf activity, which has altered our livestock pasturing protocols and overall outdoor recreational activities. We regularly see wolf tracks in our woods and are visible on our trail cameras year-round. This has prevented me and our 2 young children from taking hikes in our wooded areas alone after a close encounter last winter. We also pasture our cattle year-round, and while we've not had livestock depredation occur, the wolf pressure continues to increase and remains a threat to our herd. My overall concerns with the wolf management plan are, first, I oppose the creation of the buffer zones surrounding reservations. This takes away rights of private landowners. I also oppose giving away wildlife management authority in these areas as well. The department excludes reservation wolves from harvest considerations when developing harvest wolf quotas. The creation of subzones around tribal lands increases the wolves that can be excluded from the population estimates. This would limit or exclude our property from any future wolf hunts and the potential of being underreporting wolves in our area. I also have concerns around the lack of numerical population goals and the resources that would need to be in place in order to effectively manage what's being proposed. And I also have concerns over the long-term solutions preventing wolf depredation beyond permanent fencing. My home is within the boundaries of the wolf habitat. I respect these animals and appreciate their cultural significance to my tribal neighbors. As a business and private property owner, ensuring those that live closest to these animals have a voice in how this plan is executed and enforced before overpopulation in our zone is critical. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Crystal. Next up is Rand Atkinson, and I'm not seeing Rand on here in my list. Rand, if you're on, could you text message and let us know what your handle is here? We'll go to Dawn Williams. And I also am not seeing Dawn. Dawn, if you're on, if you could use the chat to tell us so. Otherwise, I'm going to move on and move you to the end of the list. So next up will be Chris Albert. Following Chris will be Jake Walchizak. And I apologize if I botched your name there, Jake. And then Randall Talchek. Now, Chris, if you wanted to start by saying your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
I am Chris Albert. I am from Mount Washington, Kentucky. I'm a veterinarian, so I understand concerns of producers, but I also feel that wolves are very important. There are lots of good things I see in the updated wolf management plan. I'm very glad the concept of a population cap on wolves has been dropped. I'm glad there is emphasis on non-lethal deterrence to minimize livestock conflict. A buffer zone around tribal lands is a good idea, as well as shortening reporting times and making hunting license zone specific. When there is a persistent problem from a particular animal, only that animal should be targeted. One of the things that has been repeatedly demonstrated is that general hunting and trapping season that targets all wolves is not a useful or appropriate response and does not diminish livestock conflict. I would like to see more restriction on hounding. It is safe to assume that hounds running rampant for hours on end can cause enormous disturbance to all forms of wildlife, and their trespassing on private property with pets and livestock is most unwelcome. At a minimum, hound hunting should be banned in our national forests. I would welcome an oversight committee consisting of biologists and other professionals. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Chris. Next up is Jake Walchizak. And I'm not seeing Jake online here. Jake, if you're online, please use the chat to tell us how you're appearing. Randall Talchek. I'm also not seeing Randall. Guy Ryder. Not seeing Guy. Ryan Cornelison. Not seeing Ryan. Lois Palmer. Also not seeing Lois. So Jake, Randall, Guy, Ryan, and Lois, if you're online and want to comment, please send the text through chat and we will take you here in a minute. Otherwise, I'll add you to the end of the list. So next up would be Lori Grosskopf, followed by Stephen Anderson and Adrian Whiteven. And Lori, if you just want to state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Lori Grosskopf, I'm from Tomahawk, but I happen to be in a work session in Toma today. And my comments, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My comments are that every scientist who knows his wolves knows that wolves belong in areas where there's plenty of game for them to eat, very low human presence, and very low agriculture presence. Fortunately, the draft plan does not recognize 2 out of 3 anyway of those parameters. We need to have wolves in Wisconsin in areas where they're appropriate and where their safety is assured as well as human safety. And that happens to be areas without much human presence, definitely very low agricultural presence, and plenty of game to eat. That needs to be looked at in this plan. Thank you very much for allowing me to comment.
Thank you for your comments, Lori. Next up will be Stephen Anderson. And following Stephen, we'll hear from Adrian Whiteven and Steve Suckchamel. And again, I apologize if I botch anybody's name. And Stephen, if you just want to start with your name and where you're calling from, and we'll hear your comments.
Okay, my name is Stephen Anderson. I'm talking from Hartford, Wisconsin. I'm also a co-property owner of some land in Oneida County. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I support the adaptive management approach proposed in this plan, though I do have some reservations. I'll save those for the written comments. A similar approach has been taken in Minnesota and Michigan, so we have neighbors doing the same thing. A new plan that provides some flexibility to respond and adjust policies, goals, and strategies year to year to reflect new knowledge of wolf ecology, resolve human conflicts in a timely fashion, and ensure the future of the wolf seems appealing to me. Like it or not, until state law changes, there will be numbers and quotas in our future if we return to state management and regulated hunting and trapping. I hope the now infamous and outdated target of 350 wolves is once and for all abandoned. This value might have had merit in 1999 when wolves carrying capacity was estimated at 500, but the wolves have shown us that the carrying capacity is in the vicinity of 1,000 or more. The 350 number was a worthy projected target for a growing population, displaying a sigmoid growth curve with the carrying capacity estimate of about 500. It reflected a somewhat optimum density below the stresses of being too crowded and above the threats to viability of being too scarce. This might be an oversimplification in light of the complexities of wolf biology, but applying the math and logic from 1999 to current wolf numbers, a more realistic population goal for today might be in the neighborhood of 700 or more wolves. Though I'm not an advocate for the hunting and trapping wolves, I do recognize that this adaptive approach to wolf management will require all interested parties regularly meet to be heard, and compromise will play a role in ensuring a healthy and acceptable number of wolves thrive in Wisconsin.
Stephen, we're coming up on time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, I've just got a few lines. It'll be real quick. Whatever annual kill quotas might be set in various wolf zones, I urge the powers to be to keep an eye on the total population and maintain wolf numbers that reflect an optimum density in light of the best estimated carrying capacity at the time. This plan allows that flexibility. Thanks for the DNR to hear our opinions.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Next up will be Adrian Whitehaven. And following Adrian, we will hear from Steve Suchamel and Linda Gallas. And Adrian, if you just want to state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Hello, my name is Adrian Whitehaven. I'm from Cable, Wisconsin. I represented Wisconsin's Green Fire on the Wisconsin Wolf Advisory Committee in 2021. Wisconsin Green Fire appreciates the opportunity to comment on the draft Wolf plan and offers these comments. Wisconsin Green Fire congratulates the department on the tremendous work in preparing this draft plan, incorporating the latest science while also considering diverse opinions of stakeholders and sensitivity to cultural concerns. Green Fire supports these elements of the Wolf Plan, removing the numeric goal as done for bears and deer and focusing on fulfilling ecological roles. This Green Fire especially appreciates efforts by the department to move beyond the 350 goal of the 1999 plan, which is based on earlier knowledge of carrying capacity and viability analysis. Managing toward a 350 goal would require eliminating wolves from 2/3 of current wolf range in Wisconsin. We support redrawing wolf zones to manage the wolf population more effectively, with the exception of Western Lincoln County, which should be part of Zone 1. We support creation of buffer zones around Indian reservation to better protect reservation wolves. We support rigorous focus on wolf population monitoring using an occupancy modeling approach. Wisconsin Green Fire does have some concerns and recommends some of the following. We recommend that Western Lincoln County which represents important core wolf habitat should be re-added to Zone 1. We have concerns that the plan should balance permits and license to avoid long extended hunting trapping seasons that extend into the winter tracking period or wolf breeding season. And we recommend that any training period for dogs should be authorized only in zones that remain open to the public, to public hunting and trapping when those zones are open. So we thank the department for the opportunity to comment and encourage folks to look at our Green Fire website for more details on some of our comments. We feel the return of wolves is a conservation success story. Our Wisconsin wolf population is currently secure, and wolves now occupy the majority of favorable habitat. Future management action should maintain viable population of wolves in Wisconsin while encouraging greater understanding and acceptance of wolves in the state. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Adrian. Next up will be Steve Suchamel, followed by Linda Gallas and Nancy Turpin. And Steve, if you want to just start by stating your name and Stephen, we're getting a lot of static and not. Stephen, I just muted you. I'm going to come back to you after the next speaker. I'm not sure what's going on with our connection, but we cannot hear you clearly. The communications coming through pretty intangible. So I'll come back to you in a second, and hopefully we can figure out if there's something going on there with the connection, or if we need you to mute a microphone or something. All right, Linda Gallas is next. I do not see Linda online, and Nancy Turpin follows that. I don't see Nancy online either. If either Linda or Nancy are online, if they could use the chat to let us know. Otherwise, I will move them to the bottom of the list. And then next up, I have Patricia Nicholson, but I don't see Patricia online. I do see Megan Nicholson, and so I'm going to assume that this is one and the same, and I'm going to go to Megan next. And following that will be Wendell Johnson.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to go because my name wasn't in the chat. Oh, go ahead.
Just go ahead and if you can state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments. Sorry for that confusion.
No worries. My name is Megan Nicholson. I'm calling in from Madison, Wisconsin. On behalf of the Humane Society of the United States and our supporters, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Again, my name is Megan Nicholson. I'm the Wisconsin State Director for HSUS. I'm sorry, I'm hearing some background. First, thank you for your efforts to update the wolf plan. While we have some concerns, we appreciate many of the changes made, including the removal of the numerical population goal. We support the recommendations to reduce some of the harms caused by trophy hunting and trapping wolves, including pursuing administrative rules to reduce registration times, limiting wolf licenses to a specific zone to more effectively, and the creation of subzones 1B and 2B. The quota in these subzones should be set at 0 to more effectively provide a buffer area for wolves who primarily live on or adjacent to reservations. With that said, we do have some concerns with the plan. We are especially concerned by the establishment of a hound training season and the plan's overall emphasis on trophy hunting and trapping of wolves when they're not federally protected, including in response to conflicts with livestock. A higher emphasis should be placed on non-lethal conflict prevention methods. Scientific studies demonstrate that killing wolves, particularly through trophy hunting and trapping, can lead to increased conflicts, while non-lethal deterrence can be highly effective. Using trophy hunting and trapping to address conflicts as prescribed by Product B1F goes against sound science and should be removed. Additionally, Product C2H to establish a hound training season for wolves is irresponsible and amounts to state-sanctioned dogfighting, as the season will undoubtedly increase conflict and lead to increased harassment of non-target wildlife and trespass issues with landowners. The plan also places an alarming emphasis on trophy hunting and trapping wolves. Indeed, most of the strategies under Object C provide multiple benefits associated with wolf population are related to the killing of wolves. Wolves provide many services that benefit all Wisconsinites, including increasing biodiversity and ecosystem services, disease reduction, and preventing deadly deer vehicle collisions. There is little discussion of the potential consequences of killing wolves, including pack dissolution, increased poaching, and increased conflicts with livestock. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak, and we will also provide written comment.
Steve, this is Randy. This is Randy's. There you go.
Yeah. Steve, you're sounding like a squawky robot to us, and we're not. Sorry, Stephen, you're sounding like a squawking robot that is unintelligible. I'm not sure what the issue is with the Zoom platform or the connection. I'm going to go on to others. I will ask our technical staff to chat with you privately and see if we can resolve that. It might be that you need to leave and come back in because we're just not we're just not able to understand what you're saying. And I apologize for that. We'll go on to Wendell Johnson, and then Katie Madison will follow, and then Francisco Santiago Avila. And Wendell, if you'll just start by your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your
Yes,
comments.
my name is Wendell Johnson from Marinette. I'm an emeritus professor of biological sciences at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay Marinette campus. Part of my graduate work included working with wolf biologists on Isle Royale National Park. I am also a deer hunter. I have read this excellent science-based draft of the wolf management plan in its entirety. It is important to understand that wolves are a state resource, not just of local concern. This plan appropriately removes the flawed, dated idea of a numeric statewide population goal, thus giving DNR wildlife managers greater regional options. This plan also wisely focuses on the many ecological benefits of wolves. In addition to this draft, I should include the following important points. There should be no night hunting of wolves, just as we ethically behave with deer hunting. There should be limits, secondly, on the size of hound packs in the use at any one time. And thirdly, wolves are a respected apex predator and should be classified as a trophy game animal. And hunters should have an opportunity by a zone-specific lottery for hunting. And finally, wolves serve many functions, such as reducing deer overpopulation and their dangers and damage to motorists and agricultural production. Statewide public opinion surveys show strong support and tolerance of wolves as part of Wisconsin's biodiversity. This draft is an excellent result of thorough survey of scientific literature and reasoned balance thought by trained wildlife biologists. We are fortunate to have these workers and wolves in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Next up is Katie Madison, and I do not see Katie online. Katie, if you are online, please text us and tell us how you're appearing. Next up will be Francisco Santiago Avila, followed by Valerie Gibbons and Cynthia Samuels.
See if we know anybody else on here. Good, we're done. Sweet Pete.
Francisco, you can state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Sure. My name is Francisco Santiago Avila. I am a resident of Madison, Wisconsin. I'm also Science and Conservation Manager for Project Coyote and the Rewilding Institute. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I want to thank all the DNR staff involved in updating the plan. That said, we are very concerned about the plan's bias towards lethal methods and wolf killing. And to begin, the draft really is far from reflecting the best available science on wolf ethology and well-being, on the effectiveness of non-lethal interventions, especially relative to lethal ones, and on the impact of widespread killing on wolves' dynamics, ecology, and even evolution. Now, dozens of recent studies in each of those topics are omitted from the plan, and most, if not all of them, present robust evidence against lethal methods and recreational killing, and in favor of stricter protections for wolves and the use of non-lethal methods for conflicts. Now, when you combine those omissions with the explicit promotion of sustainable recreational killing as a main management strategy, you're inevitably going to get a biased and an unscientific plan. In addition, the plan also runs contrary to public values towards wolves obtained by the department survey. For example, the plan never mentions that most Wisconsinites oppose hounding, trapping, and feel that hunting wolves is unnecessary and culturally offensive to tribes. And that's pretty much what the plan seems to prioritize, again, with very little and unreliable science. Now, lastly, there are agency objectives like public hunting and conflict mitigation that are not only not acknowledged as conflicting, but even misunderstood as harmonious against scientific evidence and public values. So in general, we think this plan misinforms and promotes an unscientific and instrumental view of wolves that is contrary to public values, and we hope this is addressed in the final draft. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Valerie Gibbons. And following Valerie, we'll hear from Cynthia Samels and Diane Kane.
My
Valerie,
name-
go ahead. And
Okay.
so if you
My
can start,
name-
yep. Start with your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Okay, and you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Valerie Gibbons in Monona. I appreciate many of the new goals the DNR has proposed, especially removing an arbitrary wolf population of 350. I'd like to see 2 points reviewed. The plan acknowledges there are non-lethal options to reduce wolf and livestock conflicts, but stops short of prioritizing them. The focus should be on prevention, not the unsustainable practice of payment for livestock loss. The plan should prioritize funding for abatement measures and non-lethal controls in order for someone to receive compensation for confirmed predation. Saying it's too expensive is helping promote a culture of kill rather than a culture of coexistence. My understanding is wolves take less than 1% of Wisconsin's livestock and do not threaten the state's deer population. A wolf-human attack has never been recorded in the lower 48. Rather than using fears or some losses as justification for wolf hunting, the DNR must focus on providing myth-busting public education. Second, killing these sentient, sapient, social beings should not be, quote, an outdoor opportunity. The plan should outline concerns with Act 169, which mandates a wolf hunting season, and recommend legislative changes be made to further the plan's goals. While in the meantime, strictly curtailing quotas even to 0 and banning the cruel use of hounds on wolves, resulting in compensation, which results in compensation for an individual's hobby sport
Valerie, we're beyond time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
and not supported by the majority of hunters or the public. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for your comments. Next up will be Diane Kane. A little change in order. Following Diane, we'll hear from Andy Sichawa and Nate Vandergrift. And Diane, if you want to just start by stating your name and where you're calling from, then we'll take your comments.
Thank you. My name is Diane Kane. I'm from Hickston, Wisconsin. I support the 2022 Wolf Management Plan, and I believe the DNR captured the commentary of the 29-group Wolf Management Plan Committee very well. In the unforeseen event, the Great Lakes wolves were to lose their current federal protection and face a wolf hunt as mandated by Act 169, I would encourage the term zone-specific selective cull instead of wolf harvest. Recreational hunting or wolf harvest tacitly normalizes killing wolves for fun and trophy, while leading hunters and trappers to have an assumption there will be a sizable number of wolf tags available at their disposal. Zone-specific selective cull describes aptly the mechanism by which the quota of wolves will be determined in each zone, lowering expectations of large quotas with a rampant slaughter. The February 2021 wolf hunt showcased the need for Wisconsin wolf hunters, trappers, and houndsmen to be held to a higher standard. Perhaps this change in verbiage would elevate the intrinsic value of wolves in the mind's eye of the recreational hunter, while advancing the awareness wolves serve as a keystone species with substantial evidence indicating wolves self-regulate their populations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Andy. I apologize, Andy, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but it's spelled C-I-E-C-I-W-A. And I'm not seeing you on my lineup here. So if you are online, Andy, if you could send a message in chat so we know. Otherwise, I'm going to add you to the end of the list. We'll hear from Nate Vandergrift next. And after Nate, we'll hear from Paul Collins and Tanya Koshuk. And Nate, you'll need to unmute. Okay, Nate, I'm going to move on and move you to the end of the list. Next up will be Paul Collins. Following Paul, we'll have Tanya Koshuk and Sarah Starr. Paul, you can start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Collins, the State Director for Animal Wellness Action, a lifelong Wisconsin resident and vegan calling in from Madison while on break from work and not from my couch in California. Today, you are going to hear or have already heard from folks that love, respect, and sadly despise wolves. You are also likely going to hear the usual lies and propaganda about wolves eating grandchildren and the incessant fear-mongering that the same over-amplified voices have been parroting for years. From me, you're going to hear a simple message. Wolves belong here and across the country, contrary to the culture war-based narrative. Neither myself nor our organization will ever support, encourage, or condone the recreational killing of wolves in Wisconsin or anywhere else. That being said, we are realists, and I will address the proposed management plan on its merits. While not perfect, this plan is light years better than the archaic plan currently in place. Its ridiculous numeric goal of 350 wolves that somehow became a population cap for the anti-wolf factions. It was never to be a maximum number, but those folks will clearly never accept that. We like that there are no set in stone numeric elements in the updated plan. We also like that tribal considerations are being listened to for once, and that there has been much more of an attempt to include non-killing stakeholders in the committees related to the species. We do, however, think that there should be separate scientific and stakeholder committees so that there is a clear separation between the politics and the science. We also feel that there needs to be more emphasis on non-lethal deterrence and less emphasis on using the contracted USDA wildlife services to lethally resolve conflicts. The 65 wolves killed by the feds and landowners in 2021 seem to be more for revenge rather than for deterrence or mitigation. That being said, my written comments will go into greater detail on the pros and cons of this plan. However, our stance leans towards support with caveats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. Next up will be Tanya Koshuk, followed by Sarah Starr and Cynthia Samels. And Tanya, I'm not seeing you on my list, so if you are online, please send the chat and tell us. And Sarah, I'm also not seeing you online right now. So we will go to Cynthia Samels. And following Cynthia, we'll have, I I have two Christines, Christine with a K who did not provide a last name, and Christine Horowitz, and I'm not seeing either of you online. So if either Christine is online, if you could let us know through chat. Following Cynthia, if either of the Christines is not online, we will go to Jeffrey Brown and Kate Solar. Cynthia, if you want to start by saying your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Great. Am I muted? I'm sorry.
No, we can hear you.
You're doing that. Okay. Thank you so much. My name's Cynthia Samuels. I am from Bayfield County, Zone 1A, at the top of the list for wolf populations and kind of a depredation hot spot. I guess I'm speaking for those of us living in this county. Farmers, hunters, just friends, people that I live with, that I communicate with on a daily basis. I have yet to meet someone who has spoken adamantly negatively about having wolves on the landscape. The only people that seem to be voicing some of these, 350 populations, please keep those, etc., are sadly the only people. I don't know them, but they are the wolf hunters, and they are the bear hounders, the people who use hounds to chase wolves. I'm very pleased with some of the things that have been done, especially the removal of the numeric population goal, the low quota zones around the tribal lands. The plan is very rightly focused on ecological benefit of wolves, and the education component is something that is truly important and missing. I'm excited to see that implemented. The plan is reflective of the public opinion, and it has expressed commitment to science, which, the science is clear about the 350 number, and it's really time that science play a much bigger role in the way that wolves are viewed, that they are welcomed on this landscape, and that we learn to coexist. The farmers where I live, many that I drive by have guardian dogs, they have donkeys, they have great fencing.
Cynthia,
okay.
we're beyond time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Thank you so much. I just am going to encourage non-lethal methods for those who need help with fencing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. All right, next up, if Christine, if you're online, Christine with a K, I'm not seeing you. Or Christine Horowitz, I am also not seeing you. So we will go to Jeffrey Brown. And after Jeffrey, we'll have Kate Solar and Kelly Villas. And Jeffrey, you can start by stating your name and where you're calling from.
Sure. My name is Jeffrey Brown. I live in Madison. I'm a climate and renewable energy investor in the state and a proud Sierra Club volunteer. I moved to Wisconsin from New York 2 years ago, and I want to say you have a beautiful state full of kind people. I want to say that I do believe that the DNR plan is rightly focused on the ecological benefits of the wolves. The plan acknowledges that there are responsible farming practices and other non-lethal options to reduce wolf and livestock conflicts, but unfortunately stops short of recommending that the DNR prioritizes these opportunities. And with that, here are some key points. The best way to stop loss is to prevent it altogether. The focus should be on prevention, not payment for livestock loss. Scientific studies demonstrate that killing wolves, particularly through recreational hunting and trapping, can lead to increased conflicts, while non-lethal deterrents can be highly effective at deterring conflicts when used correctly. And the first two subzones, 1A and 4A, would be used to reserve the ability to direct greater harvest pressure into those areas, which have been historical areas of wolf and livestock conflict. Now, again, research has shown that wolf hunting tends to not consistently harvest animals involved in livestock conflict anyway. Using the best available science, rather than prioritizing a wolf harvest to help with livestock conflicts, the plan should focus on non-lethal methods, creating a win-win. The plan outlines the strategies related to increasing public education related to the implementation of non-lethal conflict deterrent techniques. There is a growth in the marketplace of non-lethal innovative technologies in the space of biodiversity protection. The DNR should be looking at all monitoring, soundscape capture, and tracking tools for implementation. Lastly, I especially support the collaborative efforts with natural resource educators to develop classroom engagement strategies with lesson plans focused on Wisconsin's native wildlife, including the wolves. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jeffrey. Next up, I have Katie Solar, and I'm not seeing Kate on the line. Kate, if you are, you can send in a chat. We'll go on to Kelly Villas, and then I'm going back to Stephen Suchamel, since I think we resolved the issues with that line. And Kelly, you can just go ahead and start with your name and where you're calling from, and we'll take your comments.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Kelly Villas. I'm a lifelong Wisconsin resident and I live in Waukesha County. Just want to start off by saying that wolves do not need management. The land has a carrying capacity and they will self-regulate. They don't need us to go in there and kill them to manage them. They do need safe corridors to travel. And that is an issue. And that is something leaders need to be looking at. The plan that you have emphasizes and promotes recreational killing. I don't support that. The plan should end all lethal management of wolves. It should also, I'd like to just point out there's farmers and ranchers in Wisconsin using non-lethal management successfully. The plan should ban night vision, traps, snares, and killing contests especially. The plan should require abatement measures and non-lethal conflict minimization techniques by livestock owners in order to receive confirmed predation compensation. And there should be zero compensation for people who choose to put their hounds in harm's way, hounding, hunting wolves and bears. The plan does not reflect public values, as mentioned earlier. Public is against hounding, trapping, and in general hunting of wolves. The final draft should emphasize public values and not dismiss them. The scientific community has expressed some concern that the model used systematically overestimates the wolf population. That's the occupancy model. That's a concern, and more needs to be done to stop poaching and address it. And then finally, I understand that the Minnesota plan is a much better plan than what we have here in Wisconsin. And I ask you to please benchmark their plan and make ours better. Use it as a challenge, use it as a guide to make our plan better in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Kelly. We're going to go on to Stephen Suchamel. And after Stephen, we'll hear from Morrison Lamb, Lindsay Botts, and Drew Martin. And Stephen, you'll need to use *6 to unmute. And he just disappeared from my list. Okay, hopefully he'll call back in because he's not on my list. All right, Morrison Lamb is next on my list, and I don't see Morrison online. Lindsay Bott follows, and I don't see Lindsay online either. Drew Martin was next, and Drew is here, so I'm going to ask him to unmute. After Drew, we'll hear from Elizabeth Ward and then Kate Mabry. Drew, if you want to start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Drew Martin, and I'm a Sierra Club volunteer from Florida, but I'm a strong advocate of wolves, and I'm currently reading a book about the wolves of Yellowstone. It is my belief that wolves are beneficial to the environment and that we should encourage the wolf population in Wisconsin. From what I understand of wolf culture, actually killing wolves throws off the family. And so it's better to let wolves manage their own populations rather than having those populations managed by agencies. Further, hunting of wolves will kill the most successful dominant wolves, which are the ones that control the family. Wolves that are controlled by their own species are much less likely to cause harm. I also think that wolves are healthy for the environment and do not harm game. And so that people who suggest that wolves need to be killed to make more game available, I think are incorrect. Wolves themselves kill the weakest and actually make the species healthier. So my feeling is that if you want to have a healthy wolf population, that you should not encourage the killing of wolves through trophy hunting or other types of hunting, but you should allow wolves to manage their own population. Thank you for allowing me to make comment. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Next up will be Elizabeth Ward. And following Elizabeth, we'll hear from Kate Mabry and Sandra Holloway. And Elizabeth, if you just state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ward. I'm calling right now from Fitchburg. And I'm here to testify on behalf of the Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter. We will submit long, more in-depth written comments later, so I'm just going to mention a few high-level points today and speak as fast as I can with the limited time. First and foremost, we want to thank the department for listening to the call for a plan that puts science over politics, centers tribal engagement and comments, and considers public input and public opinion. These are the core tenets to natural resource management, and they're especially important as we're experiencing a growing biodiversity crisis. Overall, we think the plan is well written and responsive to the things I mentioned above. We'd rate it a 9. The things we would like to see maintained in the plan, and we support in the plan as you move forward, is the removal of the numeric population goal. Arbitrary goals can't conform and adapt to ecological changes and best available science. Numeric population goals ignore wolf pack dynamics and biology. So there should not be a population number added into the plan. The low quota zones around tribal lands where requested is a fair compromise that recognize tribal authority and treaty rights, both of which supersede Wisconsin law. If it's true that the plan can't be amended once finalized, we'd encourage the department to continue to do extensive outreach and make sure all 11 federally recognized Wisconsin tribes have their demands and requests granted to the extent possible. The plan outlines strategies related to increasing public education around the implementation of non-lethal conflict deterrent technologies. We're especially supportive of this, given that it's a win-win-win for everyone with an interest in Wisconsin's wolves. While, again, we support the plan, there are a few things we'd like added or changed to make it even better. Those include your recommendations, the department's recommendations for changes to Wisconsin Act 169. Though the plan must follow the current law, DNR's voice on these issues will be important throughout the life of the plan. The plan should also outline a way to regular update it and a provision for when it will-
Elizabeth, we're at time, so I'm gonna ask you to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you again. As I said, we'll follow up in more writing. Thanks for hosting this hearing and listening to all of us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your comments. And I want to remind folks, since Elizabeth mentioned that she'd be submitting written comments, the public comment period is open until February 28th. And there are several ways you can submit written comments. Those will appear on the slides that cycle through. They can be submitted through our online tool. They can be submitted via email, or they can be submitted by snail mail. And again, the addresses and instructions for how to do that are on the slides. Next, we were going to go to Kate Mabry, and I'm not seeing Kate online. So as I've been saying, if you are online, Kate, and I'm missing you, please send a chat and let us know how you're identified. Next up will be Sandra Holloway, followed by Steve Suchamel, and then Jean Syhos.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. If you could just start with your name and where you're calling from.
Thank you so much. My name is Sandra Holloway, and I live in El Cajon, California. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in favor of increasing protections for wolves, requiring non-lethal conflict interventions, and banning recreational killing. The current draft does not reflect the best available science and is missing a substantial amount of scientific literature on wolf ethology, sentience, sapience, sociability, agency, and well-being. It is missing literature on the effectiveness of non-lethal interventions, especially relative to lethal ones. And it is missing scientific literature on the impact of widespread killing on wolves, physiology, behavior, well-being, their social dynamics, ecological relationships, and evolution. These scientific omissions, combined with the emphasis on and promotion of sustainable recreational killing and consumptive users as a main management strategy, results in a biased plan that runs contrary to scientific evidence, despite much of this omitted scientific evidence being more recent, numerous, and of stronger inference. The plan should strictly curtail any lethal management of wolves, except in extremely rare circumstances of immediate defense of life. Research has shown that policies allowing liberalized killing of wolves has shown result in a direct increase in the hazard and incidence of illegal killings. Hounding or hound training should be illegal or severely restricted, as this practice is extremely cruel to wolves and hounds alike and is not supported by the majority of hunters or the broad public. The plan should prioritize wolf protections and concentrate solely on non-lethal management of wolves in response to livestock conflicts to ensure ethical coexistence. Several studies have proven a proactive non-lethal approach leads to better conflict mitigation. In general, all omissions of scientific literature, the arbitrary prioritization of policy objectives, the rhetoric of the plan, and the dismissal of public values and concerns towards wolves points towards a biased, unscientific, and instrumental view of wolves that promotes values contrary to broad public perspectives on wolves. Thank you for letting me speak for the wolves today.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Sandra. All right, next up will be Steve Suchamel. And I'm going to try unmuting you again, Steve. And you're going to use *6 to do that. And you can start by stating your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You can go ahead and make your comments.
Calling from Medford, Wisconsin. The draft wolf management not acceptable. Population of wolves. Goals would be 350 with the draft proposal is a wolf expansion. social analysis. 3, human/wolf nations must be kept to a minimum. Public opinion from those people living with wolves dramatically supports this. 4, there's no scientific rationale for expansion of the buffer zones, only political. 5, the plan does not address the economic impact of the wolf expansion plan in those expanded areas. 6, the plan, the quality of wolf life. Northern Wisconsin is predominantly private owned with an existing presence. 7, the draft wolf management plan is not the product of the committee involved. 8, there are minimal to existing wolf programs in other states. And 9, without proper management tools and wolf pot, human safety is an issue. Thank you for letting me have my 2 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, David. Apologies for the technology glitch earlier. I'm glad we were able to get you on over the phone. Next up, we'll go to Jean Sihos, and I am not seeing Jean online. Jean, if you're online, you'll go ahead and let us know via chat how you're on here. Alyssa Perry is next, and I'm also not seeing Alyssa. So we'll go on to Allison Dahlman, followed by Tom Hawk and Phyllis Etter. And Allison, if you want to just start by saying your name and where you're calling from.
Allison Dahlman, Cambria veterinarian. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I appreciate the removal of the numerical goal for wolves, but I'm deeply concerned about the lack of best available science on their suffering and family dynamic when one family member is killed. It also lacks evidence-based, highly efficacious non-lethal methods to reduce conflicts. As a veterinarian, I have witnessed non-human animal suffering, their sensitivity, concern for others, care for their young, playfulness, personalities, and affection. Just because humans don't understand wolf speak, body language, and other non-verbal forms of communication does not mean they don't do and feel it. We have documented that cortisol, heart and respiratory rates, blood pressure all increase under duress. But do you really need to see a heart monitor to know that if your foot is in a trap or you're being chased by dogs, see your son or spouse screaming in pain to know that you and they will feel great pain? Do you need your spouse to die to know that you and your children will suffer and your lives be forever diminished? The majority of the public don't want wolves hunted, trapped, or hounded. So protecting them allows wolves to maintain their families, which then benefit ecosystems. It reduces poaching. It respects their inherent right to live, encourages non-lethal management, aiding all species, and demonstrates our growth as a society choosing to step away from barbaric behaviors such as hounding, trapping, and hunting, this keystone apex icon who thinks, feels, loves, and cares for family, just as we do. Broadly, protecting wolves demonstrates the capacity to be more accepting of other, which we need greatly. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comments. We are going to go on to Tom Hawk, Phyllis Etter, and Ann Edwardson. And it looks like Tom is not online. And it looks like Phyllis is not online. Tom or Phyllis, if you're online, please use the chat to let us know how you're identified. Next up will be Ann Edwardson. After Ann, I've got a list here, Laura Davies, Mark Ode, Melissa Tumbleson, Jan Hummel, Chris Hines. All of you are registered, but I'm not seeing you online. If you are online, please send a chat. I'll read those names again. Laura Davies, Mark Ode, Melissa Tumbleson, Jan Hummel, Chris Hines. If none of those folks chat us, then Barbara Voigtman will follow, and Edwardson. And Anne, if you just want to, again, state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Okay. Ann Edwardson from Madison, Wisconsin, and a lifelong Wisconsin resident. Thanks for this opportunity to speak and for the thoroughness of the draft plan. We must never again have a hunt that is a national disgrace. And if the wolf, I'm concerned that if the wolf is no longer listed as endangered, the mandated wolf hunt seems contrary to this plan. Somehow through either legislative action, administrative rule, or something, the provision of the mandated hunt needs to be modified, if not eliminated. Maybe something like, if 3 or more stakeholder groups determine that a hunt is not advisable or is not likely to be well regulated, then a hunt shall not be held. I'm also concerned about the non-resident licenses. I understand they generate revenue, allow for reciprocal hunting, but they should be limited to a percentage of resident licenses. I feel, say maybe for every 5 resident licenses given out, maybe 1 non-resident license may be issued. And it should be well communicated that non-residents are guests and do not have rights that precede residents' rights. The Animal Legal Defense Fund has a Bill of Rights for animals. One is the right of animals in the wild to self-determination and an environment that allows them to engage in behavior natural to their species. And it's not to dismiss or minimize the impact of wolf predation, yet wolves have a role in the balance of nature, which may not always be apparent. And some attribute as a factor in the increase of Lyme disease, the extinction of the passenger pigeon, for example. We each enjoy the Wisconsin woods for a variety of reasons, and we need to find a way for all of us to share nature with respect for each other and the people and wildlife who live here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, I have not seen Laura, Mark, Melissa, Jan, or Chris, so we will go on to Barbara Voigtman. And then following Barbara Voigtman, I have 2 more folks who look like they registered but are not online. Mia Lawrence and Hannah Lee. If neither of them are online, we will go to Melissa Smith after Barb. And Barbara, if you just want to start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Sure, thank you. This is Barb Voigtman. I live in Forest County. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you to the DNR and the Wolf Management Committee for putting this plan together with a focus on ecology, stewardship, and science. However, I encourage additional focus on the following 4 areas. The first is education. I live in Wolf Range in a wooded rural area, and sadly, I hear countless inaccurate comments from members in my own community related to wolves. I feel that the DNR is in an ideal position to promote positive PR for wolves, and I would encourage more funding and emphasis on education in this plan. Secondly, the use of non-lethal methods. I grew up in a farming community and know how important each farm animal is to the farmer. While wolf attacks on livestock are rare, research has shown that the use of non-lethal methods to prevent a predator attack are many times superior to the use of lethal methods, as you've heard today. I feel there needs to be more emphasis on education and funding for non-lethal protection of livestock in this plan. Thirdly, eco-health and ecotourism. With the decreased interest in hunting overall, having a healthy wolf population is key to the ecological health of our wildlife. As a keystone species, wolves provide a balance in nature that humans are not able to obtain. In addition, we in Wisconsin have a unique opportunity to create an industry around ecotourism, similar to what has happened in Yellowstone since the reintroduction of wolves there. This ecotourism industry could potentially make up for lost revenue from declining hunting and could support the overall ecological health of Wisconsin's wildlife. And finally, the tribal perspective of wolves. As one learns more about wolves, it becomes clear why the indigenous tribes of Wisconsin have such a deep cultural connection and high regard for wolves. The tribes have centuries of experience of living in harmony with wolves, and as a result, tribal experience and perspectives should be more heavily considered in the wolf plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Barb. I am not seeing Mia Lawrence or Hannah Lee. So we will go on to Melissa Smith. And after Melissa Smith, I have Megan Swearingen and Karen Feghali, and I'm not seeing them. So if they aren't on after Melissa, we will have Kathleen Presnell and Rick Neville.
Hey, everybody. You can hear me just fine.
Yes, ma'am. If you could just start by saying your name and where you're calling from.
Melissa Smith, Great Lakes Wildlife Alliance.
And you can go ahead with your comments.
So my first comment is I'm sad there's not video because I had a whole interpretive dance set to recreational hunting does not reduce conflict. I guess we won't see that tonight. My first comment is I appreciate you putting the tribal representatives first on this call, right? Like you respect them and give them preference, but you don't do that in policy. Why I like what you've done in the plan, moreover, as a white girl from Madison, you haven't done enough. You haven't done enough in this plan to restore Indigenous rights. We're still working on a Eurocentric plan, and don't get rid of me. But if I had come out and said what Mike Bruce said in the beginning, I would have been kicked out of this meeting. I guarantee it. That kind of negative speak towards the agency who's hosting this meeting, which I thank you for hosting, that wouldn't have been okay for me to say. No, we're not PETA eating, tree hugging, celery eating people. We're Wisconsinites. It doesn't matter if I live in Madison. We pay for up north. Now I understand those effects matter up north. What my comment is, I would have liked to see values studied in the social survey, because, and I understand at the agency you're traditionalists. That's how you view it. But the public views wildlife as mutualists. We don't see this the same way. So I really do appreciate the social survey being done before this. But I do have to say, you have to think about this. It's not that I'm here for wolves. Wolves aren't more important than a squirrel or the Alvin and the Chipmunks who we heard earlier. They're not more important. But the culture has changed. The culture has shifted. And I'd like to see the agency overall shift. And wolves are a symptom of this problem. I do not think you can guarantee what happened in the wolf hunt over quota with dogs. I don't see in this plan how you can prevent that, because you told us you could prevent that in the first place and you didn't. And it was, I'll quote the DNR in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, it was an effing abomination. That was from the higher ups. So please consider this with the plan and consider being conservative. 1,000 wolves. I mean, that's nothing. Think about 8 billion people, 1,000 wolves. Nope. 1 million deer, 1,000 wolves. Please be conservative in this study with your model that hasn't been tested.
Melissa, we're over time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
That was it. I'll put the interpretive dance on TikTok. Thank you, Beth. And when you go off mute and you don't know you're talking, don't say you don't know the rest of the people in the meeting. It's offensive. Thank you.
I'm not sure what that last comment was about. I don't know any of the people in this meeting. So next up on the list was Megan Swearingen and Karen Feghali, and I'm not seeing that. Oh, Megan is here. So Megan, you're going to be next, followed by Karen Feghali, Kathleen Presnell, and Rick Neville.
Oh,
and
hi, everybody.
Megan, yeah, if you just want to say your name and where you're calling from,
Okay,
and then we'll
thanks
take
so
your
much.
comments.
Thanks so much. My name is Megan. I'm actually calling from Alaska. I am doing a career change to wildlife conservation, and I'm very concerned about wolves in Alaska, as well as wolves in the general US, the continental US as well. And I just want to say I do not support lethal management of wolves. I do believe that coexistence is possible, and we should above other methods that are lethal, we should encourage coexistence as much as possible. Like many other speakers have said, wolves are very similar to us. They rely heavily on their family connections. They are very vulnerable to being over harvested and depleted. And we have populations out here in Alaska that have been severely depleted in the interests of people. And it's about time that we consider other species as worthy, just like we do our own. And I really appreciate the chance to be able to speak all the way from Alaska. And thanks so much for letting me speak.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I'm not seeing Karen, so we will go on to Kathleen Presnell. And following Kathleen will be Rick Neville, Lourdes Ventura, and John Olferts. And Kathleen, if you just want to state your name and where you're calling from.
Sure. My name is Kathleen Presnell. I reside in Bayfield County. Just as a sidebar, I am also a delegate to the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. I do not speak for them. Just another sidebar, I do not support the policy that was put forward by the District Leadership Council at their last meeting that was made in support of the erroneous number of 350 wolves in Wisconsin. I think that the plan is actually really amazing, considering how much had to be put together, how many people had to be pulled into a circle to try and get some kind of not necessarily consensus, but at least direction. So kudos to all of you, and thank you for this listening session. I also understand that the DNR cannot do anything about hounding. It is a part of state law. So there's no way to really argue that point. It is something that the legislation has to be changed. However, after reviewing the plan, my sense is that product C2H that allows dog owners to train hounds for the wolf hunt after the deer hunt is redundant and disruptive to wildlife, and it is not directed by state law. You don't have to do this. It doesn't have to be in there. I think it was kind of something that was given to the hounding community to make them feel a little bit better about losing their 350 wolf limit. Again, I want to say thank you very much for all of your efforts. I will look forward to the final draft, and we'll support you always. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Rick has indicated that he does not want to speak, so we're going to go on to Lourdes Ventura, and I'm not seeing Lourdes online. Lourdes, if you are, please send a note through the chat, and we'll go on to John Olferts. Following John, we will have Cassandra Steiner, Sylvia Borgonovo, and then I have Sarah, who registered without a last name. So John.
Hello, my name is John Olferts, and I'm calling from Rockford, Illinois. Although my family owned a home in Sawyer County in Hayward for 60 years, and I started teaching in Milwaukee. I'd like to recognize the WDNR staff and thank them for updating this wolf management plan, which is a significant improvement over the old one, as many people have commented. Like many Wisconsinites concerned with conservation, I'm particularly concerned about some of the cruel and inhumane methods that have been legalized to hunt wolves. The use of dogs is not just cruel to wolves, it is also cruel to the dogs. And trapping should not be allowed, nor should night hunting. And wolf hunting contests are particularly repugnant. It is imperative that a healthy wolf population be maintained. Wolves are highly intelligent social animals, and the widespread killing of wolves can have a profound impact on their social dynamics and well-being, much like culling affects the behavior of elephant herds. Wolves are a keystone species in North America. It's hard to imagine the North Woods being truly wild without them. It would be like visiting the Serengeti without lions or hyenas. Much like Africa, the WDNR should consider the tourist money that can be brought into the state if wolf populations are allowed to grow. Tourists from around the world would pay top dollar to see wolves in the wild, much as they do at Yellowstone. The WDNR plan needs to give more consideration to how repugnant wolf hunting is to the Native American tribes who consider wolves to be their spiritual brothers. Wolves play an important role in Native American religion. How can we say we promote religious tolerance and freedom if we're allowed to desecrate one of the central animals to their religion? I applaud the WDNR for introducing buffer zones to reservations in this plan. And I also fear that the liberal hunting plans will result in illegal poaching of wolves. Research has documented that this has happened in many states, including Wisconsin. In conclusion, we've worked so hard to reintroduce wolves in the wild. Nobody eats wolf meat. Trophy hunting of such a magnificent keystone species should be discouraged, not promoted. Wisconsin has much more to gain by keeping a healthy wolf population, both ecologically and in tourist dollars, than in promoting their slaughter by hunters. While Act 169 mandates a wolf hunting season, the WDNR must regulate it with an eye to preservation of the species, ensuring that inhumane techniques are that timing methods and quotas do not adversely impact the continuation of a sustainable population. Wisconsin will benefit far more from tourists like my family, anxious to explore your beautiful North Woods, populated with a majestic wolf. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John, for your comments. All right. Next on the list are Cassandra Steiner. And I'm not seeing Cassandra online. Sylvia Borgonovo. I have a registrant named Sarah, looks like coming from Australia, and Leroy Sillers. I'm not seeing any of them showing up online. So next up will be Caleb Tydrick. And then I have David Brinkman, Nancy Nolan, and Sam Young, who are registered, but I am not seeing them online either. So after Caleb, if they don't show up, we'll go to Linda Hiller-Deppy and Judy Augie. And Caleb, if you want to just start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Sure. My name is Caleb Tydrick. I'm in Milwaukee County. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to Randy and his team for drafting this great plan, and also to you, Ryan, for hosting this session. So I'd like to start off by saying wolf conflict between both, especially humans and also livestock, is smaller than many times made by the media, and it's also funded by state-sponsored plans like the Wolf Depredation Fund. And many times that takes precedent over non-consumptive measures like wildlife viewing by people like me who actually, unlike some people in this chat, do live in the state and have always lived here and recreated here. And I'd also like to thank the tribal leaders for stating their issues with the plan, as I believe they have an important place and are important stakeholders in our society. And I'd also like to state that as a resident of the state, the wolf holds a special place in my heart as well. And I think we can all agree that the 2021 season was a pretty awful debacle and was not a good display from both the DNR and everybody involved. And I think this plan will help prevent that in the future. I would like to see more effective buffer zones. ideally a functional DNR board, which I believe with the recent developments can happen. And I think the ecological impact of having too many deer on the landscape can be seen in lots of parts of the state, especially parts of the state that I live in southern Wisconsin, where some species plant species have essentially, pardon my speech, essentially been extirpated off of the landscape by deer. And I'd also like to say that lethal measures are always made most vocal by those who favor them, but many times non-lethal measures can be more effective in the long term. So I think that covers it. Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next up will be David Brinkman. And I'm not seeing David, so Nancy Nolan, and I'm not seeing Nancy at this time. And Sam Young, I'm also not seeing. So we will go on to Linda Hill Deppie, followed by Judy Augie.
It's Linda Hiller Deppie. I'm from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. I've lived in Wisconsin my whole life. I'd like to thank the DNR for this opportunity for this meeting. The plan is very encouraging, very comprehensive, a great improvement. So much work went into it, is very thorough. With that, I did have a couple of thoughts. I do some writing, freelance writing, and so I do think that terminology matters. And because we have a new plan, a better plan, I wonder if it would be appropriate to have another name for it, such as Wolf Sustainability Plan, Wolf Inclusion Plan, Wolf Stewardship Plan, or Wolf Ecology Plan. Those are just some suggestions. The other terminology that continues to be troubling is the use of the euphemistic, apologetic, metaphorical word harvest. I think we should call it what it is. It's a wolf hunting season, and there are take or kill rates. I think that's just more accurate and more transparent and more sensible. I'm wondering about the wolf caution areas, how the people could be incentivized not to enter those caution areas. Maybe there could be some kind of tiered compensation for varying between family pets, bird dogs versus hunting hounds that are put into the situation when it's a known conflict area. And finally, in the plan, under the section of costs and benefits, I was really impressed by this sentence. The wolf is viewed by many as a symbol of wildness and ecological integrity, and its recovery provides certain psychological benefits and spiritual well-being. I think that really holds true for a lot of people. And
Linda, we're at time, so if you could wrap up, please.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so that I'm just glad that that was included, and it is very meaningful for a lot of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Okay, next up will be Judy Augie. And after we hear from Judy, I have David Isberner, Peg Pat Cadigan, Tara Jackson, and John Marchwick. And I'm not finding any of them here. So if they don't show up before Judy is done with her comments, we will hear from Mark Silverman and Neil Messerschmidt. And Judy, if you want to just start by saying your name and where you're calling from, we'll hear your comments.
My name is Judy Augie, and I am from Madison, Wisconsin. And I too have been a lifelong Wisconsin resident. I want to thank Randy for the opportunity to share our thoughts on the wolf management plan. I hope that you will all take this I hope that you will take all of our concerns and comments to heart. I was glad to see that the new plan acknowledged the positive ecological benefit of wolves on the landscape. However, there are still concerns that need to be addressed. I feel that the population of our Wisconsin wolves cannot be accurately estimated. Hound hunting and training in Wisconsin takes an unaccountable toll on our wolf population. Wolves move their spring pups to their rendezvous sites in mid-June. Pups at this time are only 6 to 8 weeks old. Bear hound training starts July 1st and runs through August 31st, and then the actual bear hunt starts shortly after. When hounds are run through the rendezvous sites, fights occur between the hounds and wolves while trying to protect their pups. How many wolves and pups are killed during this time that aren't reported? The same holds true during the bear hunting season. There isn't a wolf mortality count taken into consideration during this time. Hunters complain that their hounds are harmed or killed by wolves, yet they put them out there in harm's way. If they lose a hound to a wolf or bear, they are compensated $2,500. Yet the wolf or bear's life is worth nothing. I say hound hunting and hound hunting training needs to stop. It should be illegal to run dogs on our wildlife, to confront and kill them for a sport. How many wolves are being killed by hounds or their owners who will shoot them for attacking their dogs? Stop hounding in Wisconsin. It's barbaric and results in the killing of our wildlife. I say no to any wolf hunt in the future. And to quote the DNR mission statement, to protect and enhance our natural resources, our air, land, and water, our wildlife, fish and forests, and the ecosystems that sustain all life. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Judy. I am not seeing David, Peg, Tara, or John online, so we will go to Mark Silverman. And after Mark Silverman, Neil Messerschmidt. And then I have Lisa Barrett and Mike Robers, who I'm not seeing online right now. So if they are not online after Neil Messerschmidt, we will have Bethany Holmes and Steve Pearson. And Mark, if you want to just state your name and Mark, it looks like you remute it. If you unmute. All right, I'm going to move on to Neil Messerschmidt, and Mark, I'll add you to the end of the list. Neil, if you want to just start with your name and where you're calling from.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Neil Messerschmidt. I'm from Edgerton, Wisconsin. I'll keep this under 2 minutes, unlike most. We are never going to know what the sustainable wolf harvest is until we have a regular season, which are based on the rise and fall of animals taken from year to year. That system worked for deer management. With that said, if over 600,000 deer hunters across all the seasons spanning 4 months only harvest approximately 25% of the 1.5 million deer in the state, how can anyone realistically think hunters took out 25% of the wolf population in 2 days during the 2022 hunt? Either wolves are the dumbest animal on 4 legs, or there are far more wolves than we are led to believe. It would seem that money is no object with the DNR when it comes to wolf management. So as an avid hunter, I would like to see the state actively pursuing the delisting of wolves in the courts, as opposed to waiting for the federal government to move on it. Once delisting happens, schedule hunting and trapping seasons with a balanced allocation of harvest tags made available to accommodate callers, trappers, and hound hunters. Set the harvest goal at 29% of the estimated fall population of wolves yearly until the overwinter population estimate nears the 350 animals, which was the social carrying capacity number sold to the public when the wolf reintroduction got started. Lastly, I'd like to say that while hunting is considered cruel by many who don't, the harvesting of game by hunters rarely approaches the brutality which it takes place when wolves kill deer. Once a deer is brought down, the pack begins to devour it savagely, one bite at a time until it expires, which can range from several minutes to several hours or more. I challenge any wolf supporter to go online and after watching 30 minutes of videos of wolves taking down deer, see if you come away still feeling the same towards that animal. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. All right. I am not seeing Lisa Barrett or Mike Robers, so we will go on to Bethany Holmes. And after Bethany, we'll hear from Steve Pearson, Annette Robertson, and Gloria Ann Klein. And Bethany,
Hello?
if you just want to start, if you just want to start with your name and where you're calling from.
Okay. Hello, my name is Bethany. I'm calling from Ohio, and I'm very concerned about the wolves in Wisconsin. The thing I will acknowledge in this speech is the lack of consideration for individual wolves and the health of the wolf population. There's a reason why the quote, "For the strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf," exists. If this plan does not consider wolves as individuals, the wolf population will not be healthy. This is where the amount of wolves killed is important. Sure, killing one wolf can be recorded as one wolf dead in terms of the wolf population, but that one wolf can affect how the pack functions. That one wolf's death could lead to more deaths in the wolf pack. And that was just one wolf. Imagine what it would be like if multiple wolves were killed. That would not be a healthy wolf population. So, to maintain a healthy wolf population, you need healthy wolves, and to have healthy wolves, it is a wise idea to not kill the wolves and coexist with them instead. Not every problem needs to be solved with a bullet. That's all I have for my speech. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Steve Pearson. And after Steve, we will hear from Annette Robertson or Gloria Klein. Steve, if you just start with your name and where you're calling from.
I am Steve Pearson from Danbury, Wisconsin. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I've lived in wolf country on wooded acreage for the past 44 years, and I've watched the wolf population grow as a result of the protections of the Endangered Species Act. I raised 2 children here, and now I have 2 grandchildren living nearby. It's a good day when I see evidence of wolves, which I often do when winter camping on the St. Croix River near my home, and on occasion on our property. It should be noted that not one human life has been lost to a wild wolf in the lower 48 states in the last 50 years, compared to the 44 people killed by dogs in the US in a recent year alone. The new draft plan, for the most part, does what I hoped it would. It's science-based, it's allowed for considerable public input, and it's the result of a collaborative process with the tribes. I appreciate the hard work of all involved. Some of the things I like include the removal of the numeric population goal, which was arbitrary and not based on the best available science. I like that the plan creates low quota zones around tribal lands where the tribes requested it. It's good to see that the plan reflects public opinion and was released along with a plan that showed opinions toward wolves have grown significantly more favorable toward wolves. And I like the strong commitment to science and continued research on wolves. Things I would change: hounds chasing wolves for months is inhumane to both species as well as other species they encounter. I'm against using dogs to hunt wolves. The plan currently would allow hounds to chase wolves for training purposes during the wolf hunting season across the entire state until the very last wolf zone is closed. This could go on for months and would interfere with the wolf breeding season in late winter and break up well-established packs. The plan acknowledges that there are responsible farming practices and other non-lethal options to reduce wolf and livestock conflicts but I do recognize that sometimes lethal means must be employed. Farmers should be able to protect their farm animals using lethal means if necessary and should be compensated for their losses.
Steve, we're a little over time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
You bet. Having said that, I hope we never see a repeat of the wolf slaughter of 2021. Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate your comments, Steve. Next up, I have Annette Robertson. I'm not seeing Annette online, so we will move on to Glorianne Klein. And after we hear from Glorianne Klein, I have Steve Hogseth and Timothy Ropp, and I'm not seeing them online. So if they are not, we will go to Jean Voss, followed by Lois Lehman. Glorianne, if you want to start by saying your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Glorianne Klein. I'm from Milwaukee County. I have worked with wolves and observed wolves since 1988 for hundreds of hours. So I speak from experience. I've also been a Wisconsin wolf stakeholder, and I have been involved in wolf issues for the last few decades. I first of all would like to compliment the DNR on the current draft wolf management plan. It has come a long way, and it has showed the willingness to grow since the 1999 plan. I'd also like to commend them on eliminating the numeric goal of 350. Again, we have learned a lot about wolves, and we have also learned that wolves can exist beyond just wilderness areas. We have learned that we need to adapt, and wolves can also adapt to not only wilderness areas, but rural areas, and as they're coming and growing their population. So the focus on sustainability is a good thing. I also want to commend them on the inclusion of tribal perspectives and cultural. The necessity of including that is with the Native American, we have 11 tribes, and they've been consulted with, and they are being included, and that's important. It's imperative that we continue to use the best available science and also sound biological principles. Regarding some of the more specific issues with the hound hunting, I've been a vocal opponent of hound hunting because it has been proven to alter wolf behavior. Hound hunting is not necessary, and it's already been proven that it's not needed to meet the quota.
Glorianne, we're beyond time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, I also just wanted to say I echo the Wisconsin Green Fire recommendations, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I have Steve Hogseth, and I'm not seeing Steve. And then I have Timothy Ropp, and I'm not seeing Timothy. So we're going to go ahead with Jean Voss. And after Jean, we will hear from Lois Lehman. Oh, Jean, I'm sorry, you're online, and I got to get you your phone number here. Sorry. Okay, you should be able to unmute by pressing *6. And then you can just start by. Yep, we got you. So you can just start by saying your name and where you're calling from.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jean Voss. I'm calling from the town of Pleasant Springs in Wisconsin. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. The wolf management draft acknowledges that wolves are attracted to bear baits. That is a problem. Wisconsin law states that baits toxic to wolves are illegal when used during a wolf hunt. Yet the DNR does not prohibit the use of bear bait toxic to wolves during the off-season. This is an extreme contradiction and should be seriously addressed in the finalized wolf management plan. No bait toxic to wolves in our state's forests during any time of the year should be allowed. Please incorporate a ban on chocolate and xylitol products year-round to prevent unnecessary toxicosis in wolves and other wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Lois Lehman. And then following Lois, we will hear from Logan Hughes, Bethany Pickard, and Patricia Pesco. And Lois, if you'd just start by stating your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, thank you. I am Lois Lehman, lifelong resident of Madison, Wisconsin. And the work that I have done around wolves and other wildlife was not sitting on a sofa. Pardon me for that, but I had to say it. I want to quote Jim Brandenburg. The cornerstone of ecology is that all creatures are dependent on each other. A deer, for example, has died in the fall. Ravens, eagles, coyotes, fishers, martins, chickadees, and the wolves have eaten. The long winter sets in and spring arrives. The mice, voles, insects, and microbes turn what is left of the carcass into new life. The enriched soil pushes up new growth that will one day be eaten by the deer, which will itself be eaten. Page 129 of Jim Brandenburg's book. All species matter, and I couldn't help but note there is no wanton waste as in killing contests. Thank you very much for the plan, developers. I very much appreciate it and read all. I want to commend them for their courage to hang on to, maintain the non-numerical population goal, even after the Wisconsin Conservation Congress Leadership
Lois,
Council.
we're a little bit beyond time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
Please, I do not support the current law 169, and I want to see legislative changes, and also to remove dogs or hounds from national forest land, which creates pressure on not only the wolves, but other wildlife as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I will send my comments in to the plan developers for further consideration.
Thank you for your comments. We are going to move on to Logan Hughes, and then after Logan, Bethany Pickard, Patricia Pesco, and Chuck Rakovich. And Logan, if you'll just start with your name and where you're calling from, please.
Sure thing. Good evening. My name is Logan Hughes from Portage County, but currently I'm on the beach in California. I'm only joking. First off, I just want to say, yeah, great job to all the DNR folks that worked on this plan. Like many people said, it's a significant improvement from the 1999 plan by adopting the current scientific evidence. But there are a few things that I would like added into the plan. One being, since a common misconception with wolves is that they decimate the deer herds, we need a clear outline of what the deer carrying capacity is in each county or region based off forest health, browse availability, and average adult deer weight. Because according to Donald Waller, who is a botany professor from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who published a paper in 2015, found that the forest health in northern Wisconsin has been severely degraded by the overabundance of deer. So having that just clearly outlined, perhaps like in the appendices of the plan would be great, just to have that data available. Two, the wolf hunt should really only be concentrated in areas where livestock depredation events have exceeded acceptable levels rather than a general statewide hunt. Why are we killing wolves in areas where they're not causing a problem? I don't think that's really proper management. In regards to the overhunting and poaching, if overharvest occurs, the number of wolves that exceeded the quota should be removed from the following hunt season. Same goes for poaching. Any wolf that is discovered throughout the year that was deemed poached shall be removed from the following quota. For example, if the quota is 100 wolves this year and we kill 120, well, an additional 20 wolves were found to be poached throughout the year, and the following hunt quota is 100, we should subtract the 20 overharvest and the 20 poached from the next season, giving us 60 tags rather than the full 100 again. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Logan. Next up is Bethany Pickard, and I'm not seeing Bethany online, so I'm going to go on to Patricia Pesco. And following Patricia will be Chuck Rakovich. And then I have Marjorie Zamora, Linda Hendricks, and Sue Cartman. And I'm not seeing them online. So next will be Jessica, who registered without a last name. Oh, I'm sorry, Patricia. I just remuted you by mistake. You can go ahead and just state your name and where you're
Yes.
calling from.
Yes, my name is Patricia Pesco and I live in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. This plan has many components that are much appreciated and I feel needed. I appreciate the fact that this plan is focused on the ecological benefits of wolves, namely keeping ecosystems healthy. They're a keystone species. They keep deer elk populations in check, which can benefit many other animals, species. I also thought it was great to include low quota zones around tribal lands. These lands are treaty protected with documented wolf packs. I feel the plan should expand these zones beyond the few listed. I support a plan to remove the numeric population goals, which ensures the numbers of wolves are adaptable so they can be based on the best available science and ecological changes. Let's see. I feel that the wolf population, you mentioned public opinion. I feel that the public opinion is positive towards the wolves. In talking to people in my area, there are many who I feel appreciate them and value them as opposed to hunting them. Let's see. There are things that I'd like to have changed. The plan needs to have to prioritize opportunities for responsible farming practices and other non-lethal options to reduce wolf and livestock conflicts. There should be no dollars paid for hound loss. I also would like to see added, if there is going to be hound hunting, then the DNR should better regulate hound training on wolves. They should close wolf-focused hound training activities as each wolf hunting zone closes, rather than until the very last wolf zone is closed. I noticed there's no plan for the next review, and that's really important. There should be a plan to regularly update, including a
Patricia,
science.
we're a little over time, so I'm gonna ask you to wrap up.
Including a science committee. And then one final thing, I am in favor of increasing protections for wolves. I very much oppose the hunting with dogs. I oppose night hunting and trapping. So thank you.
Yep, thank you for your comments. Next up is Chuck Rakovich. And after Chuck, I have Marjorie Zamora, Linda Hendricks, and Sue Cartman, and they're not showing up on my list. So Jessica, who registered without a last name, you're going to be following Chuck, and then Garrett Laskowski will be after that. And Chuck, if you just start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Yeah, Chuck Rakovich, Chippewa County, Wisconsin. I grew up 70 years old. I grew up in Wisconsin. As a kid, ran through the woods whenever we wanted to. We never had such a thing as a wolf depredation report. And all I'd like to ask everybody that's on this forum, everybody that's watching, listening, or whatever, please go and look at the DNR's wolf depredation report. And don't just go back to this year, go back for 10, 12 years. And the other thing I would like to see, I'd like to see the DNR make that depredation report a lot more, I guess, friendly to people that aren't real good on computers to find. You have to work to find it. But I think if people would take a look at the wolf depredation report going back a dozen years, I think there'd be some eyes opened up. And that's all I got to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Jessica, and then Garrett Laskowski. And I just wanted, before we get too far along here, just to express my appreciation for everybody's patience here as we slog through this. We're coming up on 3 hours, and I know it's a long time. I appreciate everybody's patience as we go down the list. We have a few more to go, and then I am going to go back through to come back to anybody who I called on who did not unmute at the time and give them a
somebody said
chance.
something after it.
Oh, somebody isn't muted there. All right. So Jessica, I'm going to unmute you, and if you could start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then
Hi,
we'll
can you
hear
hear
your
me?
comment. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I am definitely a calf-searching wolf activist from Connecticut. I'm going to focus on the wolf hounding. If the state's going to hand out $2,500, in my opinion, of misappropriated funds, which is equaling up to $2.3 million to date, to irresponsible wolf hounders, they might as well pass out participation awards to hunters who use household pets for all the hard work. I'm going to focus on two fundamental facts. Dogfighting is a felony in all 50 states. This also falls under the Animal Welfare Act, which includes abuse for profit. Allowing untrained household pets to partake in such deadly activities is no different, and the state is allowing brutal, glorified dogfighting. Number two, humans have killed humans for much less than $2,500, so it's no surprise that the same human species would exploit domesticated dogs for the same means, especially when there's a possibility of financial gain. Hound hunting is animal abuse. The pet owners of these hounds are the abusers. Thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you for your comments, Jessica. Next up will be Garrett Laskowski. And after Garrett, I have Dan Laskowski, Joni Wirtz, and I don't see them online. So following Garrett will be Elaine Swanson.
Hi, this is Garrett Laskowski, and I'm calling from Chippewa County. This plan and the methods and studies it is based upon is full of holes and contradictions, the largest of them being that wolves don't affect the deer population. The plan suggests there are remarkable cost savings of having wolves because it reduces the amount of car collisions. Yet the study proves the relationship that wolves can be used as a population control tool. How can that work? 34% of elk mortalities in the northern herd were due to wolf kills, particularly in 2009 to 2015. Yet they don't impact the deer herd. The plan cited a study that said wolves were not identified as a predator in any fawn mortality. In the northern area, unidentified predators were 37% of mortalities, and in the eastern zone, that 60% were due to coyotes. Coyotes prefer fawns, but wolves don't. We know they consume 17 to 25 deer per year. What is sad about all this is that the DNR is using narrow, misleading information and adhering to people uneducated on this topic that don't live in wolf territory. To simply summarize the survey as most citizens want wolves in Wisconsin is a gross mischaracterization of those results. Those on the call that live in wolf range and are outdoorsmen and women already know this, and it is clearly represented in the survey, but those that don't live in the territory rely on the DNR to give them accurate information, in which the DNR has failed miserably. The studies cited are not thorough and don't address all the variables. The DNR needs to rectify this by giving more weight to those that live in wolf territory. This affects their livelihood, whether it's directly through depredation or the indirect costs, like the loss of small businesses and tourism due to the diminished deer herd. Someone from Kentucky or from their office in Madison should not have a say like landowners in wolf territory. Perhaps as a good non-lethal method of control, we should transport these wolves to Madison, Kentucky, California, Ohio, or Illinois, where they all want them. Our northern citizens' livelihood should not be jeopardized by others who don't live there and by an agency that does not provide quality information. This plan is a sham and a joke.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next up will be Dan Laskowski, who is online, and then we will hear from Elaine Swanson. Dan, you can go ahead and state your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll hear your comments.
Hi, my name is Dan Laskowski. I'm reporting from Pulaski, Wisconsin. Do you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I do not support the wolf plan as there are many flaws in it. What we need to do is start working together as a team instead of ignoring the issues of the ever increasing wolf population in order for a wolf management plan to be successful. All elected officials, who include our legislators, need to be involved and should be pushing for a sound wolf management plan. Wisconsin should seize the opportunity to be an example for all of the wolf inhabited states by having a plan that has a wolf population that is grounded in reality and not at the expense of the citizens. Wisconsin has well surpassed the federal requirements to have them delisted as an endangered species. So the state should be focusing their effort on getting them delisted so that they can manage them appropriately. If you were to ask me what I think the number of wolves should be in the state, I would tell you 0, because I have been an avid deer hunter in the northernmost part of Wisconsin and have been a landowner in Bayfield County for the past 28 years. My opinion is one extreme and is very selfish and irresponsible, one at that. And if you were to talk to the anti-hunters, which is the majority speaking tonight, you would get that no wolves should be harmed, which is the other extreme and also a very selfish and irresponsible opinion. The difference is I get and understand that there is a need for the wolf, but it needs to be managed like all other natural resources, which the antis will never agree with. The wolf and the deer are both a natural resource, and the DNR cannot continue to sacrifice one natural resource for another. For the DNR to say that they do not want to have a wolf population goal is very irresponsible and goes against every natural resource they currently manage. The DNR uses population goals to manage fish, deer, bear, etc. How can they throw that out the window for wolf management? That is ridiculous. I hope that with the new DNR secretary, we will see a change in how wolf management program progresses so that the public does not get biased data from the agency or other special interest groups trying to sway the public, especially for those who do not hunt and are not aware of truly how many wolves are out there. I have learned one thing over the years: figures lie and liars figure. So let's do what's right and become a leader and manage this natural resource properly and responsibly. It's
Dan,
not
we're
surprising.
beyond time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, it's not surprising that majority of the wolf lovers commenting tonight live in the southern part of the state where there are no wolves. The amount of surveys sent to each area should be proportional to where the wolves reside. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up will be Elaine Swanson. And after Elaine, we'll go to Rick Schroyer. I have Scott McCauley, but I'm not seeing him online. So we'll go to Rick Schroyer. And then I'm going to go back to the folks who I passed over earlier if the remainders aren't online.
This is Elaine Swanson. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. If you could just state where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Sure. We live in rural Pickett, east central Wisconsin. Thank you for allowing additional discussion about the wolf plan. I speak from the viewpoint not of a scientist or a carnivore specialist, but as a naturalist. And I strongly object to hunting practices that inflict fear and pain under the name of sporting heritage. I'm very concerned about the recent news of shootings at a high school in the Midwest revealed the shooter had a history of torturing wildlife. Children learn from a young age, maybe sharing space with pets or creating habitat for wild species. They learn that non-human animals experience fear and pain just as we do. Studies have shown that cruelty to animals is often a warning of more violence to come. I'd like to see the updated wolf plan reflect not merely tolerance, but respect and reverence for wolves and a recognition of their superior ability to regulate their own numbers. I support only non-lethal management of wolves in response to livestock conflicts. I'd like to see greater wolf protections, not biased privileges for hunters. I feel that experts in the field and peer-reviewed research should be the overwhelming guide for a model wolf plan. Mental health within our society should be everyone's responsibility. Thank you for considering these comments.
Thank you, Elaine. Next up will be Rick Schroyer. And after Rick, I have Dale Herringa, Julie Gaines, and Stephanie Wheelock, and I'm not seeing them online, so I will move forward and go to Nate Vandergrift and Mark Silverman next. And Rick, if you want to just start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Sure. Rick Schroyer from Abrams, Wisconsin. Several things that I don't agree with the population with the new wolf plan here. Just going to go down as a bullet point with the 2 minutes that we have. Let's start with the buffer zone. You know, I personally, I don't believe in the buffer zone. I think it's ridiculous. If I own land right outside the reservation line, what's good for someone 10 miles away should be good for me as well. I personally wish all the wolves lived on the reservation, but you know, they don't understand the boundary lines either. The population goal, how do we not have a population number? How do we manage to something with no goal or no number as a goal? Every other animal that we manage has a population goal, but the wolf is just special. I hear a lot of comments on here tonight about the wolf's feelings. Well, how about the other animals' feelings? You know, I hear that the wolf is the spiritual brother of some people. Well, maybe the white-tailed deer is my spiritual brother and the wolves are eating my brothers. We have to get out of this ridiculous mindset and look at it as a realistic thing. Every animal needs to be managed. I question the economic impact. You know, more wolves in northern Wisconsin equals less deer equals less hunters. if people aren't coming up and spending their money in these small towns, I think that's really gonna have an impact. And I guess lastly, I'd like to just mention my own personal opinion. I could care less what somebody from California, Utah, Illinois, whatever thinks about this. I think the merit should be put on the people who live in the wolf zones and have to deal with it. The wolf is a beautiful animal. There is a place for it, but like everything, it needs to be managed. Thank you for your time. That's all I got.
Thanks, Rick, for your comments. Okay, I'm not seeing Dale Heringa or Julie Gaines or Stephanie Wheelock. So I'm going to go back to the folks who I called on earlier who were online, but were not able to unmute or comment for one reason or another. So that'll be Nate Vandergrift, followed by Mark Silverman. And then that will conclude the registered folks. Now, if there is somebody online who registered and has not yet made comments, if you would put your name in the chat and let us know that, I will come back and give you the opportunity if we missed you earlier. So Nate, I'm coming to you. So Nate, I've sent a unmute request. All right, then I'm going to move on to Mark Silverman.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Hi,
State your name
thank
and where
you.
you're calling from,
Oh,
and then
Yes, thank you very much. This is Mark Silverman from Milwaukee. I'm the president of the Wisconsin Animal Protection Society. We're a nonprofit organization that's been around since the early 90s. And I didn't know about the *6 way to unmute on my phone before. And so I've switched over to a different device that worked. So thank you very much. And thank you for spending the considerable time and effort to create such a comprehensive plan. As the Humane Society of the United States suggests in their comments, we feel the plan should include a provision that it be updated at least every 5 to 10 years. Initially, we must point out that the Wisconsin Animal Protection Society opposes the intentional killing of wildlife by humans. Population control is no more justification for killing wolves than it would be for killing humans. We're concerned with the use of the word harvest, not just by DNR, but we see that it's become very popular as a way to refer to the killing of wild animals. We wish that the plan would be ethics driven in addition to its being science driven, and that the DNR would recommend that the state law be changed so it does not require a wolf hunting season when gray wolves are delisted from the Endangered Species Act. With regard to trapping, trapping is an inherently violent practice. Traps that are used, including body gripping traps, are inhumane devices that inflict great pain and suffering. In a letter to Congress, Dr. Colin Wolfe, who is a board certified veterinary surgeon, quote, "The undeniable truth is that these bone crushing devices are inherently indiscriminate and inhumane." We encourage the DNR's exploration of additional funding options, as the plan suggests in Product B4D, to prevent the need to prorate wolf damage claims. Additionally, the DNR should explore the request for donations from conservationists who oppose hunting. This could be similar to the sale of the endangered resources license plate. Alternative funding options would lessen the reliance upon funding from the sale of wolf hunting licenses and permits. In other words, instead of a license to kill, it'll be a license to save. While we appreciate the plan's reference to the pursuit of administrative rules to limit the time period within which dogs may be trained for wolf hunting activities.
Mark, we're a little over time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Last Yep, my last sentence is that we wish the department would pursue regulations and rules prohibiting the use of dogs to hunt wolves. Again, thank you very much. And we really like the long-term stewardship and sustainable management approach. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. And now I'm going to go to Scott McCauley. And Scott, I apologize for missing you earlier. I've sent you an unmute request. You'll need to do *6 to unmute your telephone line.
Okay, I got her.
Great. If you could just state your name and where you're calling from.
Okay, Scott McCauley, Wisconsin Rapids. With this plan, I agree with the Wildlife Federation, the Bow Hunters, and the Wisconsin Trappers Board of Directors that there's more needed to be done. But myself, I don't like the 350 number going away. I don't think the public is ready for that. When you're only trying to manage 1,000, 2,000 animals, it's just not good enough. I mean, with the CDAC stuff, with the county deer committees, I mean, we're working with thousands of deer, and nobody ever agrees whether we should go up or down with the goals anyway. But with wolves, some of the comments have been, I just don't think trying to manage that small a population with the adaptive management goal is going to work. But they're always saying that, you know, you shoot some wolves, you chase some wolves, and the pack goes to heck. Well, they did what was her name? Ellen Heihickler, grad student years ago, did a study on pups survival in Wisconsin. Half the pups out of every pack that year died before they reached 1 year old. And one of the comments was 1/3 of the adults die every year. So the packs are in constant flux. You know, they're never stable. So that's about all I have. Thank you very much for letting me talk and finding a way to get me in here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Scott. I have one more person who is registered to speak and is online by phone. And that is Mike Robers. Mike, I'm going to unmute you or ask you to unmute. You use *6. And you can start by stating your name and where you're calling from, and then we'll take your comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name's Mike Robers. I'm from Sawyer County, Exelon, Wisconsin. I'd like to talk about the depredation. I'm kind of disappointed in the lack of the fact that we're not going after a number goal. How do you know where you're headed if you don't have some kind of a goal out there? Our particular farm in 2021 had a cow killed not more than 30 feet from our dairy barn, and there's tracks just outside. Our calf hutches had wolves on our silage bags 4 different times during that year, and to see wolf tracks almost every day within 100 yards of our barn is getting to be a little bit nerve-wracking. Also, in the last 2 years, we've had 2 beef cows and 3 calves confirmed and numerous kills suspect by wolves within a 20-mile radius of our farm. Another farmer has also had wolves tearing into his feed bags as well. I also sit on the CDAC committee, and probably the biggest complaint on that is the deer herd. The biggest complaint on the CDAC committee is that the deer herd is in depredation by wolves and bear. It's nothing for us to find at least a dozen deer carcasses in our fields every spring. The next biggest complaint in Sawyer County is the lack of deer and the wolves. I think a person's way of making a living should rate high on the list of the priorities on wolves. I also don't know how it's physically and financially possible to fence all the grazing and pasturing areas that cattle are in and keep the wolves out. And that's the extent of my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, for your comments, and thanks for your patience as we figured out the phone thing. At this time, it looks like we don't have anybody else registered to speak. Staff have gone back through the list and have double checked to see if anybody was registered that has joined the call since I called their names. But I want to make sure that we do not preclude the opportunity for somebody who registered to talk because we missed them. So if you registered to talk and we did not give you the opportunity because I either moved over you or I missed a phone number or something, if you could use the raise your hand feature, and you can do that by going down to the bottom toolbar and clicking on reactions and then clicking raise your hand. And if you registered and didn't get your chance, go ahead and raise your hand. And while I'm giving folks time to do that, I just want to thank you for your attendance. And I want to remind everyone that in lieu of, or in addition to their oral statements today, written comments will be accepted by the DNR until Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Written statements will have the same weight and effect as oral comments presented during this listening session. And written comments can be submitted by email, and the email address is DNR Wildlife Switchboard, and that's all one word, at wisconsin.gov, or they can be mailed through US Postal Mail to Wolf Management Plan Comments, P.O. Box 7921, Madison, Wisconsin 53707-7921. You can also submit comments using the online tool found on the Wolf Management Plan webpage. And again, you can find that by going to dnr.wisconsin.gov and then going to the search function in the upper right, the little magnifying glass, and entering the words Wolf Management Plan. Again, all electronic and hard copy comments must be submitted or postmarked no later than February 28th. It appears at this time that nobody's raised their hand, and we've heard from everybody who registered and joined. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you for attending and wish you a good evening, and we're going to conclude the listening session. Have a good night, folks.